This is Trial Transcripts Exposed by Crime in Court with Heather. Raw courtroom reads with my commentary. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Crime in Court with Heather. This is Trial Transcripts Exposed. We are reading through the Menendez Brothers retrial. This was not televised. The first one was, and we watched it together on my channel, but second one, the first one ended in a mistrial for both of them. The second one, as we know, ended in a conviction. However, as it wasn't televised, we are going through it now, reading through the entire thing. We're about halfway done, I want to say. So we're going to pick up the pace a little bit by doing half a day at a time. So these videos may be a little bit longer, and I may add a day during the week. Let me know if you guys would be interested in that. If I add another day for the Menendez, I get very little views, so it really like kind of screws up my algorithm when I doing these, but it helps. I mean, I have, promised it for you guys, and I want to go through it. It's interesting to me. And right now we're on the Erik Menendez cross-examination. So, to give you guys an idea of where we're at. So that's, I guess that's all I have to say for my intro. I'm trying to think if there's any other announcements, but I can't think of any right now. My brain's kind of not working, so I'm glad I'm just reading here. So let's get started today on part 53. That was the other announcement that I was going to make. I think I screwed up the numbering in some of the past episodes. I think I've like repeated 50 or something. I have no idea what I did. This is episode 53. I think all of the pictures, the thumbnails are correct, but I might have introduced it as the wrong thing or used the wrong thumbnail at the beginning. I'm not sure. But I know this is part 53, and we're going to continue right now. Let me give you the transcript. All right, here we are. Let me just adjust the screen. Okay, so this is day actually I don't know what day it is by number. This is their day. If we flash back to the past, this is Tuesday, December 19th, 1995. They're about to get a week off for December or for their holiday. So there's going to be a big break in between there. And think about the jurors too, being on the jury for this trial. 6 months, that's birthdays, holidays, appointments, things that, you're missing out on or whatever. It's a lot. And they're 6 months trial, so all those months go by and there's bound to be something that is going to mess up someone's schedule. Anyways, all right, so the following proceedings were held and an open court outside the presence of the jury. The court says, in the trial, the defendants are in court. All counsel are present. Anything before we proceed? Mr. Levin for Erik says, no, Your Honor. Ms. Abramson also is for Erik. She says, well, so long as Mr. Khan is not going to go into the matters that are being held in abeyance on our 402. 402 is like stuff that I guess is protect or can't come in. So Mr. Khan, backtracking, Mr. Khan is for the state, just to let you know. And let me get my highlighter here. Okay. So Mr. Khan says, I don't think it's going to be necessary at this time. If it does become necessary, I'll either delay it or bring it to the attention of the court. Mr. Levin says, also, Your Honor, if Mr. Khan does plan to use that on the gun, I would like an opportunity to be heard before he does it. Mr. Khan says, that won't be this morning. Okay, says the court. The jury enters the courtroom and the following proceedings were held. Court says, the jury is in court. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Erik returns to the stand and he was already sworn in, so he doesn't need to be resworn. The court says, we're ready to resume with the trial. The defendant, Erik Menendez, is still on the witness stand and further cross examination. Mr. Khan says, thank you. Mr. Menendez, after you killed your parents, you pursued a tennis career, didn't you? Yes. And there was no one to push you into tennis at the time, was there? No. No one was making you play tennis. No. You chose to play tennis, isn't that true? Yes. And that's because you enjoyed playing tennis. Is that true? It's what I knew best. I was just going to say that as he was questioning all of those questions that he was asking, it was making me want to say it's all he knew. Tennis was all he knew at that time because every moment of the day when he wasn't in school, he was playing tennis. So it's all he knew. And his dad wanted him to do that. And he was being pushed in that direction. He didn't have the will or the autonomy to say, I don't want to do that. I want to do this instead. Because he never had autonomy in his life. So he didn't know how to just, make a decision like that. So for tennis, if that's what he knew, it makes sense that that's what he would try to pursue a career in. So this is kind of, in my opinion, pointless questioning. And you're proud of the ability that you have to play tennis, is that correct? You mean back then? Yes, back then. Yes. Now in Kalamazoo, you played pretty badly, is that correct? I played well in the first match, and then I lost to kids I should not have lost to. Now, it was apparent to you that you should not have lost, is that correct? Yes. And would you say it was apparent to your father, too? Objection. Calls for speculation. The court says rephrase the question. Mr. Khan says on Thursday or Friday, about 10 days before you killed your parents, your father told you that he might not let you play tennis on the UCLA team. Is that correct? Right. And that enraged you, didn't it? Give me a frickin' break. No. I'm sure it didn't enrage him. I'm sure it didn't make him all that upset, other than the fact that he felt that his father was disappointed in him. That's what he was upset about, if anything. Not that he might not get to play. I think he could care less. I think it was whatever his dad wanted, he did, because for 18 years he was groomed to do whatever dad wanted. So, okay, I'm not playing tennis anymore. I guess I'll give that up. And dad will make me choose something else. That's what it was like in that home. But this prosecutor wants the jury to think that he was so mad at his father because he couldn't play tennis that he killed him. This is the most ridiculous argument. It has nothing to do with all the abuse he had to go through, right? It's just tennis. Tennis made him mad. Not being able to play tennis. All the abuse is fine. No worries. That's okay. They were wonderful people, according to the state. Kitty and Jose. Whatever. Okay, so they're trying to make it seem like he just got mad at his dad, and that's why he did it. So his witnesses' responses, no. I actually was in some ways relieved. In some ways, it took a burden of actually trying to get on the team off my shoulders. So the burden of trying to get on the team was now off of his shoulders. Well, the tennis was the one thing that you did well. Was that correct? Right? You didn't do very well in school, did you? Got a 3-point average. And you weren't looking forward to spending all your time studying rather than playing tennis, were you? I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. Well, if it were up to you, what would you rather have done? Played tennis and forgot about school and spend all your time studying and forget about wait, what? If it were up to you, what would you rather have done? Played tennis and forgot all about school or spend all your time studying and forget about tennis? This is a pointless question. Objection, vague as to time. The witness says, the court says, what time are we talking about? Mr. Khan says, I'm talking about 10 days before you killed your parents on that Thursday or Friday when your father was speaking to you. It's difficult to answer the question because I didn't view it as simple as that. UCLA was one of the top 2 schools in the nation in terms of tennis, and there was a great pressure on trying to make it on the team. And my father wasn't considering that. And he just felt that if I was going to be on the team, I was going to make it. And so there was pressure to maintain my position on the team, and I was worried about whether or not I was good enough to make it on the team. And when he said you may not play on the team, in some ways it was a whoosh. I'm not sure. I was just going to make it anyways. And I didn't want to have to go through with that with my father. I'm not sure I was going to make it anyways, and I didn't want to go through that with my father. If he had tried out for the team and he didn't make it, oh boy, that would not have been acceptable in Jose's eyes. He probably would have visited the school many times as necessary to get him on the team. He says, but clearly UCLA wouldn't have been the school I would have chose if I wanted to play on the top level of the team. Well, after you killed your parents, what like he should have asked the question, well, what school would you have wanted to choose? What school would you have gone to? That makes a difference because he didn't even want to be near his parents. And that makes a difference that he was trying to get away. In some ways, college was his escape, and he couldn't wait to escape to college, but his father was making him stay close by. That's the problem here. Obviously, that's when things escalated at the moment. Well, after you killed your parents and you were able to do whatever you wanted to do, what you decided to do was to forget about school altogether and played tennis full time. Is that correct? Objection misstates the testimony. The witness says, no. I tried to get into Princeton University immediately because I felt that that's what my father would have wanted me to do. He would have wanted me to be with my family, which was back east and are back east and my brother. And once the dean said that I would have to wait to apply next year, I talked to Mark and I said I'd like to try to play tennis for a year. And we had a clause in the contract where if the next school semester I made it into Princeton or could very well go to college, then he would go on to do other things. So he hired his coach, but said, this is temporary because I may be going to school at some point. And when was it that you spoke to the dean of Princeton? I spoke to the dean on the trip between the 12th and the 17th. The 12th and the 17th of what? Perhaps the 11th and 17th of September. And when you couldn't get into Princeton, you decided to just play tennis. Is that correct? Right? And is that because the schools in California that had previously accepted you no longer wanted you? No, I think they would have maybe wanted me. It was the one thing in life that I felt comfortable with and could relax doing. It's what I had done most of my life. Tennis? Yes. The question is, why didn't you go to school here in California? All of my family was in the East Coast. My Aunt Terry, my Aunt Marta was in Florida. My Aunt Terry and my grandmother, they pretty much lived in the East Coast, and it was being in California when my family moved out here, we were really the only relatives that lived out here, and I also wasn't sure that I could pass on my own. His parents did his homework all the time. And you wanted to be with your family on the East Coast because you're such a family man. Is that correct? What kind of questions are these? Who gives a crap? He wanted to be by his family. Like, you're such a family man. You shot your own parents. Well, yeah, because of what they were doing to him. And anyone can see that with a brain. And this never should have been charged the way that it was. His answer is no. This was a very hard period, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to be out here alone in California and struggling to make it in school at the same time. That's a lot of stress. After you killed your parents, did you go back to the East Coast and live with your family on the East Coast then? No, I didn't. Why not? Because I decided to play tennis. You decided to live in California, didn't you? Yes. Well, if you were going to live in California, then why didn't you go to school in California? I just wasn't sure that I could pass in school, and I wasn't sure that I could make it on my own. My relatives were telling me to take a year off because of the trauma. I tried to get into Princeton. I thought that's what my father would want. And in the end, I just decided to play tennis. And because you were not sure that you could pass in school, that was one of the reasons why you didn't want to go to school. You would prefer to just play tennis. When are you talking? After you killed your parents. I would have preferred to just play tennis. However, I felt that my father would want me to go to school, and so that's what I wanted to do. So, did you go to school in California to do what your father wanted you to do? No, I didn't go to school in California. I think he's answered this enough. Stop battering him. Who cares that he took a year off? Lots of people do. Why didn't you go to school in California? Because I had at that point made a decision to take a year off and try next fall. So, when you were able to pick and choose whatever you wanted to do with your life, you decided to forget about going to school in California and just play tennis. Is that correct? Objection, argumentative. Overruled, says the court. The witness says, I think that's the way you phrase it and the way that you make it sound, I think is really, it mischaracterizes it. Mr. Khan says that, Mr. Levin says, objection, Your Honor, he's not completed his answer. The witness says, that's what eventually happened. Mr. Khan says, is it what you did, Mr. Menendez? That's what I did. 10 days before you killed your parents, your father was telling you exactly the opposite. He was telling you perhaps you're going to have to forget about your tennis and you're going to have to go to school instead. Is that correct? Well, it wasn't a matter of whether I was going to school or not. I was always going to go to school. He didn't say, perhaps you'll play tennis and not go to school. It was just whether or not he was going to have me concentrate on tennis or fully devote all of my time to passing UCLA and getting good enough grades to get into postgraduate school. So he had plans to go get a master's or something. When he told you that perhaps you're going to have to forget about this tennis business, he also told you that you were going to study in school. Is that right? Yes. What were you going to study in school? Economics, business, courses geared toward a business degree or economics degree. That was the last thing in the world you wanted to study, wasn't it, Mr. Menendez? Pretty much it's not what I was best at. You're right. Right. You wanted to be an actor. No, I enjoyed history and philosophy the most in college, and that's what I wanted to study. Your father made it clear to you that you were not going to go do that. Is that correct? I'm sure I would take some history courses and perhaps philosophy. However, my major was going to be geared towards business and then geared toward business school and law school afterwards. So you always knew you were going to have to take these business courses that your father wanted you to take. Is that correct? Honestly, I never really thought about it until he brought it up, and I realized that I wasn't going to. It didn't really occur to me even then, stay in my mind until the Sunday when he had me sit down and I was going over what courses I would take. And then I take it on that Sunday, you had two reasons for being upset with your father. Number one, not only were you going to have to give up your tennis playing, but now, for the first time, you're telling us it really came to light that you were going to have to forget about this philosophy and history and theater, and you were going to have to go get a business and law course, go get into business and law courses. Is that correct? Mr. Levin says, objection, it's argumentative. Your Honor, it's also overruled, overruled. The witness says, my father had always picked my schools. He'd always picked my classes. I didn't give it any serious thought that that I would be doing this. It didn't surprise me greatly that he was picking my courses. In fact, it didn't surprise me at all. It just was another routine where he would pick my classes and he would decide where he would go to school. He would pay for the school. He would decide where I would go postgraduate school. He would pay for it, and he would decide where I was going to go into business, and he would pay for it. It's not something that was a shock to me. I'm sure I suppose my father enjoyed history. If I wanted to take some history courses, he would have allowed me to. Mr. Khan says, my question to you, Mr. Menendez, is did it make you upset 10 days before you shotgunned your father to death that you were not going to be able to play tennis, perhaps, and you were going to have to study business and law instead of history and philosophy and theater? Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, objection with respect to the characterization. It's argumentative. Overruled. Everything's just overruled in this court when it comes to the defense's objections for some reason. I don't know why. Well, I kind of do, but I won't say. Well, all I'll say is that he definitely was part of the we got to get these guys convicted conspiracy because of the whole OJ stuff that happened, where OJ obviously got acquitted, and it was a big loss and failure for the LA District Attorney's Office because that OJ came in between the first trial and second trial of Menendez Brothers. So first they get the mistrials for both of them. Then they get the acquittal of O.J. Simpson, and now they're back to trying to this other whole high-profile case. They're trying to convict these boys of worse crimes than what they should have been convicted of. So basically, they should have been convicted of manslaughter, which would have given them like what 20 years or no, I'm sure it's more than that, but they would have been out by now. Because yeah, I think the maximum sentence would have been 20 years, if I remember correctly, but I can't, yeah, I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But they would have been out by now. They've been in 35, 36. So if they had been charged with manslaughter in the first place, which they should have been because of all of the abuse and not overcharged by the prosecution, then it wouldn't have been such a huge failure for them, perhaps, if they had just gone with manslaughter. But no, they had to go and convict him of second-degree murder, both of them, or try to. And I really do think that the judge was part of that, having to get them to convict them. So the court overrules that the witness says tennis in a way was a relief. And the fact that I was going to have to take these courses, maybe it was in some way, I can't say it was disappointing because I didn't think that it was going to be any other way. I hadn't really thought about it before. So you're telling, and so I'm not sure how I felt about it, really. So you're telling us it did not make you upset, is that correct? Certainly didn't make me upset. I mean, it didn't make me upset that my father said no. You're not going to go to Brown when I wanted to. It's just living with my father. He made these decisions in my life, and he was a smart man and knew what was best for me. That's totally brainwashing. Like I'm so smart and I know what's best for you. Then I know better than you what you know for yourself. Mm. The witness continues, and I lived life 18 years like that. It was nothing new. So every decision, everything in Erik's life, for the most part, big decisions especially, were always determined by uh, Jose Menendez. The question that I'm asking you, Mr. Menendez, is did it or did it not make you upset? It did not make me upset. Okay. So you had no problem with your father telling you what to study, what to do, what schools to go to, and whether or not you were going to be playing tennis? So, like, listen to his question. You had no problem that your father was a controlling asshole, making you study what he wanted you to study. He told you what to do, he told you what schools to go, and whether or not you'd play tennis. Listen to the question that you're asking. That sounds like a very controlling father, but here we're still villainizing these boys who tried to escape a bad situation. It's not unusual. It was what I used to do, and you were used to your father making all of the important decisions in your life? Yes. And it no longer bothered you. Objection, argumentative about no longer. Rephrase the question, says the court. Mr. Khan says, did it bother you any longer that your father now, when you were going into college, you were now an 18-year-old, he was still picking the courses that you were going to take and telling you whether or not you could play tennis? Objection, argumentative, overruled. Again, overruled. When I was, says the witness, the court says, in the future, if you could hold off after a question is asked so that if your lawyer has an objection, he can state his objection before you start to answer. Sure, Your Honor, says Erik. When I was just living at home and watching the interaction between my father and my brother, he was picking my brother's courses at Princeton and doing the exact same things he was with my brother years before. I hadn't thought, it never occurred to me that I would go to college and I would sit down and select all of my own courses and do this all on my own. I had assumed that my father would be intricately involved in everything to do with what courses I would take and what decisions that were almost life altering, for my future. Mr. Khan says, my question is, so it didn't bother you? Is that correct, what you're telling us? I don't think it occurred to me to be bothered by it. He thought nothing of it, is what he's saying. It didn't bother him. And if it had occurred to you, then perhaps you would have been bothered by it. Objection calls for speculation. Overruled. Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, objection with respect to the question as vague if what occurred to him. Court says, okay, rephrase the question. Mr. Khan says, yes. If it had occurred to you to possibly get bothered by this, then perhaps you would have been bothered? What? Objection, vague with respect to, the witness says, what I'm saying is that it, Mr. Levin says, Mr. Menendez, objection, vague with respect to bothered, and he has not explained what it is that he would be bothered by. Court says, okay, objection overruled. The witness says, what I'm saying is that it was not something that I didn't expect him to do. It was an everyday occurrence. I sat down, he was going to pick my courses, and I was going to go on. It was the way that it was when I was 7 years old, and he said, you're going to go to PDS. I didn't argue with him. I didn't fight with him. My father was just doing what he always did. Mr. Khan says, do you remember the December 11th tape with Dr. Oziel? Yes. And did you hear discussion on the December 11th tape with Dr. Oziel in which there is talk about your father controlling your life? Right. And is this one of the things that conversation pertained to, the fact that he was making all of the important decisions in your life? He always did. He certainly. And that is that what was being spoken about? Sorry, weird way to say it. Is that what was being spoken about on the December 11th tape when statements were being made about the fact that your father dominated and controlled your lives? Objection would call for speculation. The declarant is Dr. Oziel. Overruled. Again. The witness says, I think those are Dr. Oziel's words, and that's why he felt that eventually this happened. And I was telling him that's not why this happened. Mr. Khan says, you told him that on December 11th? Yes, I didn't. Lyle did. And that's what he felt because of what he felt was extreme control and ruthlessness in terms of domination that my father had over our lives. But I don't think that he understood that when you live this way all of your life, when you're 18, you're not surprised and it's not unusual. It was normal to me. And you're telling us that simply because it's normal, simply because it happens all the time, then suddenly it doesn't bother you anymore? Is that what you're telling us? Mr. Levin says, objection, it's argumentative as phrased. The court says, objection sustained to the form of the question. Finally, a sustained. Mr. Khan says, are you saying that simply because your father dominated and controlled your life for so many years, that by the time you got to be 18 years old, it doesn't bother you anymore? What kind of a question is this? Of course, he just thinks it's normal way of life. Bother or not bother, he just accepts it because He's it's been beaten into him that he must just accept it. So he accepts it. What I'm saying is, I'm not sure that it even bothered me. Certainly, I would have preferred to do this sometimes or that sometimes, but my father knew it all. He was brilliant in my eyes, and his way was going to be the best for me. And I didn't imagine a life where I would go to college and choose my own courses and my own career and move to Seattle and be away from him. It just never occurred to me to think that way. Isn't it true, Mr. Menendez, that by the time you got to be 18 years old and your father was still making these kinds of decisions, it bothered you more than ever before? Objection with respect to making, the witness says, I don't know why you think that. Mr. Levin says, these kinds of decisions as vague. Court says overruled. The witness says no. So you were looking forward to your father making decisions for you the rest of your life? I don't think it was a matter of looking forward to it. I think it was just a matter of he was explaining how the next 12 years of my life was going to play out, and that's how it was going to play out. And you felt that was perfectly fine with you for him to make all of your decisions for the next 12 years, correct? I really didn't care. My main concern at the time was simply to get to college and get away from the home and not be around him every day, where I have to tell him every hour what I'm doing. I was really looking forward to that. That's what was in my mind. This idea about postgraduate school and moving to Florida and going into business with him were years down the road, and my concern was just to get away. My question to you is, did you have any feelings about the fact that your father was apparently ready to make all of your decisions for the next 12 years? I don't remember any specific feelings. Do you remember any general feelings about that? Objection vague. Court says, do you understand the question? Yes, I do. Court says, answer it. Erik says, it's difficult to answer. Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, objection. The witness does not understand what a general feeling is. The court says he hasn't said that. He said it's difficult to answer. The witness says it's difficult. It's a difficult question to answer because I didn't know any other way to think. I had never lived a life where my father didn't control everything that I was going to do. I was suddenly tossed into my life and said, "Oh, I don't like this." I hadn't known any other way. And so I hadn't been trained to think any other way. This makes total sense to anyone that's been in an abusive relationship. Mr. Khan says you were present during the December 11th conversation between yourself, Dr. Oziel, and your brother, Lyle Menendez, when your brother, Lyle Menendez, said that this type of domination and control was ruining his life and, I guess, my brother's life too? No, I think you're misstating what was said on the tape. Well, who said that this type of domination and control was ruining our lives? Dr. Oziel. Only Dr. Oziel? Using the words domination and control, yes. Who used the words ruining our lives? I used that at one time when I said that it was ruining my life, but it wasn't referring to the control. What were you referring to? I was referring to the sex with my dad, and I said, I guess my brother's, because he had told him the things that happened early in his life, and I said that my father had completely destroyed my mother by that time. Now, it was in this conversation on Thursday, about 10 days before you shot your parents to death, that you said your father told you about this plan that he had about having a compound in Florida with a family that would live together? Huh? I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday or what day it was. It was before Sunday in the morning, and I don't know specifically in that conversation if he told us about the compound in Florida. Sometimes it's when you have so many facts over the years, it's hard to remember what he said in different conversations, but I was generally, I believe, aware of the compound. He wanted a compound? Why didn't I know that? Well, do you recall previously testifying that you didn't know whether you learned about this business about the compound either before or after you killed your parents? Right. I can't say for certain. So previously you testified you didn't know about that you didn't know when you knew about the compound. Is that correct? Objection, Your Honor. Request a page and line designation for counsel's reference. The court says he's asking the witness it's appropriate cross-examination without page and line. Witness says, I'm sure I did. That's what I'm trying to get across. He was telling me about the postgraduate schools that I was going to go to, and I believe he told me about Florida and the compound. But it's so hard to distinguish what I learned afterwards versus before, and to keep it all together so many years later. That's a fair, reasonable thing to say. Like, I can't remember when I knew what. Mr. Khan says, and in this trial, you testified that you did learn about that conversation, that plan before you killed your parents. Is that correct? You mean as an absolute certainty? Didn't you testify on direct examination that it was during that conversation that your father spoke about the compound? I believe that it was. Okay, and you previously testified differently, didn't you? No. Objection, Your Honor. I think we're entitled to see what counsel's referring to. The court says, are you referring to testimony in this trial or a previous trial? Mr. Khan says, no. In the last trial, you testified differently, didn't you? Objection, Your Honor. The witness says, I said the same thing. Court says, overruled. If I said it before or whether I learned about it afterwards. Mr. Khan says, but in this trial, you were certain that it was before you killed your parents? I didn't mean to portray that if I did. Okay, when you testified on direct examination, you didn't say, I wasn't sure when I heard of this. You simply told the jury that conversation occurred before you killed your father. Is that correct? That is what I believe. So as you sit here today, which way is it, Mr. Menendez? Do you do recall that before you killed your parents, or do you or you don't recall learning about that until after you killed your parents? Your Honor, we are again asking that counsel cite the page and line that he's referring to. The court says he's asking the witness now what his current recollection is. The witness says, as I sit here 6 years later, I believe it was before, but I can't be certain how my memory has evolved about that specific conversation. I believe it was before, but I'm not going to say that absolutely. He told me we were going to live in a compound before. Is this another area where your memory has improved since the last time of the first trial? Objection, argumentative. The witness says it's not. The court says, in this context, it is argumentative, sustained. Mr. Khan says, now, it was on Sunday that your father told you that you would have to spend time at home while you went to UCLA. Is that correct? Right. Okay, and now suddenly this plan about going to college and getting away from your father and ending the sexual abuse all came to an end. Is that correct? Yes. Because you now realize that your father was going to continue to have sex with you. Is that correct? I suddenly realized that that was going to continue to happen. Yes. So now you had a reason to think about leaving home. Is that correct? Yes, I did. Okay. And what did you decide when you thought about leaving home and finally ending the sexual abuse by your father? I mean, I had a reason to think that way, but that's not what I thought immediately. I immediately just felt as though I was dying and that all of my dreams were crushed and my life had folded out from beneath me. And I went up to my bed and I cried and I spent a long time there and I thought about ways to end my life because I would rather die than let this continue. And then I just said, I'm getting out of here for a few days. And that's when I decided to pack my bag. You were almost 19 years old at this time, is that correct? It was a few months before 19. Okay. And you said that you thought of running your car off the cliff, is that correct? Yes. So you were considering options at that point, is that correct? I don't think that I was weighing and considering options. These were things while I was very distraught of things that I would do or that I could do. I thought about going up to the cannon above the Calabasas house and running my car off the cliff because that would kill me, different things like that. So you were considering taking your own life as one of the possible options, is that correct? Essentially, yes. Now, was taking your own life a serious consideration for you or just something you're throwing before the jury to get some sympathy? Oh, wow. It's something I thought at the time, and it's something that that had my brother not stepped in and saved me, I would have done. Okay. And I would not have gone on. There was no way I could have gone on with my father doing these things. I wouldn't. I couldn't. Well, tell me how far you took this plot to take your own life at that point. It wasn't a plan. It was just self pity and misery in my bed. And that's as far as it went at that point. I just felt dead. And I felt that way until the time that I talked to my brother. Well, how long did you consider taking your life that Sunday? Sorry, dog's moving and I can't control my mouse when he's on my hand. How long did you consider taking your life that Sunday? How long did I consider it? Yes. I didn't stop considering it. I don't think I ever stopped considering it that whole week. Okay, so you considered it all week. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to live with this going on, so I was hoping that there was another way out, and it occurred to me to tell Lyle. I didn't think that was something that I should do. It was my feelings were against doing that, and eventually I went to Lyle for help. How extensive were your thoughts about taking your own life? What specific plans did you contemplate as you were contemplating it? I didn't come up with specific plans. I thought about killing myself in different ways to do it. You envisioned yourself driving off of a cliff? Yes. Any other forms of taking your own life that you contemplated at that time? I'm sure there were. I'm sure I considered hanging myself or whatever it took to kill myself. It was just a means to an end. It didn't matter how to me. I just didn't want to live with the pain, and I felt like I was dying. And what else? Other than driving off the cliff and hanging, any other forms of taking your own life did you consider? I don't remember. How extensive were these plans? Did you think about what specific cliff you would go off? Objection. It's argumentative. He never stated there was a plan. Overruled. Of course. The witness says off of Stunt Road in Mulholland. If is there is where I was thinking about driving my car off. Mr. Khan says, and did you consider where you would hang yourself? What type of rope you would use? No. It stopped at that time. It didn't stop at that time. It those were extreme thoughts of self-pity and pain. I didn't form elaborate plans at the time. I wasn't even in the frame of mind to do it. Did you go to school? I'm sorry, did you go to a self unaliving prevention center to call a self unaliving hotline to prevent you from killing yourself, Mr. Menendez, because you were so close to taking your own life? No, I didn't. So where's the evidence of this? Just your word, Mr. Menendez? No. Objection. It's argumentative, Your Honor. Rephrase the question. Objection sustained. The answer is stricken. Is there any evidence that you truly considered taking your own life, Mr. Menendez, other than your word? I called. Mr. Levin says objection. It calls for the witness to state a conclusion. Overruled. The witness says, I called Dr. Oziel, who I hadn't talked to in months, and made an appointment with the secretary to see him because of those feelings. Mr. Khan says, what did you make? When did you make that appointment? Either Monday or Tuesday. And that's because you trusted this man greatly, didn't you? No, it wasn't a matter of trusting him greatly. It was a matter of I really felt as though I'd reached a point where I could no longer continue. And I was searching for help, and he was a name that came to my mind, and I had considered him to be almost like a friend at that time. And did you actually meet with Dr. Oziel before you killed your parents? No. After I talked to my brother on Tuesday, I canceled the appointment with Dr. Oziel. Okay, so once again, is there any evidence that you were truly contemplating taking your life that day, Mr. Menendez, other than just your word? The appointment's on file. You have the file. The appointment, in that appointment, did you indicate to the secretary that you wanted to commit self-unaliving? No. Okay, so by looking at that appointment, were you going to know, or we're not going to know whether you're just making this up or to get some sympathy from the jury? Okay, but he called, so you have the proof that he called. So obviously he was thinking about needing to talk to someone for mental health reasons. So I think he proves a point. Objection, argumentative, sustained. Can you think of any evidence that would document that you were truly intending to take your own life that day, Mr. Menendez? I don't know what type of evidence there can be. Is there any evidence about that would document this whole story about your father telling you that you would have to stay home once in a while even took place? Objection, misstates his testimony. Overruled. I know that it's mentioned in the 1211 tape. I don't know if it's what part it's mentioned. I don't remember, but other than that, the answer, I guess, is no. Because the only other witness to the conversation was the man that you killed. Is that correct? My father. So, as you were contemplating the most drastic measures, such as taking your own life, you said that you were also hoping that there was another way out. Is that correct? Well, I didn't want to die. I'm asking you whether you were hoping that there was another way out. I guess. And as you were hoping that there was another way out, did you stop and ask yourself perhaps leaving is another way out? I never thought that. I felt dead at that point and I didn't believe there was any way out. And essentially, that drove me to tell Lyle. And again, he has already answered this, stating that his father made it clear that he would find him wherever he went. So if he tried to get away, his father could and has the means to, or had the means to go find him wherever he was. Is there a reason why you were telling the jury that you only contemplated the most drastic solution rather than the obvious solution, which was to leave? It wasn't obvious to objection, argumentative. It is argumentative. That it is an obvious conclusion. The court says objection is sustained to the form of the question. Answer is stricken. Is there a reason why you did not consider less drastic alternatives than taking your own life? Running away wasn't obvious to me. It was an impossibility to me. I just could not believe that I would get away. I thought running away was a sure means to death. And it got to the point where it was just almost like an instinct, and I didn't seriously believe that. Mr. Menendez, are you aware that at 18 years old, people don't run away from home, they walk away from home? Objection, argumentative, sustained. Did you feel that at age 18, almost 19 years old, you were still a child? I don't know what you mean by still a child. Are you trying to portray to the jury that you were still like a child and that's why you were using the term running away? He's asked all of these questions over and over again, even though you were almost 18 years old. Objection, argumentative, trying to portray anything. It's argumentative, trying to portray anything. The court says sustained. Mr. Khan says, did you feel that leaving your home at the age of 19 would be running away from home? Absolutely, it would be running away. My father would never let me walk away. Well, there you have it. So he thought he couldn't walk away because walking away meant actually um, father coming after him. So your father wouldn't let you run away either, would he? Exactly. But at the age of almost 19, did you recognize that there are people your age who leave home every day? I get letters from people around the country. I'm not asking you about that. Objection, Your Honor. The witness is entitled to answer the question. The question referred to his state of mind in August, not now. The witness says, in August, I don't remember if I knew that or didn't know that. But my father was my father to me, and whether other kids can leave their family and whether their fathers care, I didn't know, but I knew what was in my father's mind, and I knew that there was no way that I was going to get away, that he would hunt me down and kill me, and it was it was just something that I knew. Now, before your father told you that you were going to have to take these business courses and perhaps stop playing tennis, you had wanted to see your father dead from time to time. Is that what you told us yesterday? Yes. And in fact, you had even been hoping that your mother would kill your father before your father wanted you to take the business courses and before your father told you that you might have to stop playing tennis. Is that correct? I hoped that at one point. I take it then that when your father told you that perhaps you would have to stop playing tennis and you would have to take these business courses, you must have really wanted him dead. Is that correct? Stopping playing tennis was, in a way, a relief. I don't know how to express that to you. And I mean, at Kalamazoo, the pressure was extraordinary to win the tournament, and there was no way I was going to win it. And I felt badly for not doing better for my dad. And making the tennis team was a big concern to me about whether or not I'd be able to do it. The business courses, no. I didn't want to go into business, but I didn't really believe that my father would let me be a history teacher. It's not something that he thought was worthy of a real man. It was something that I wanted to do. It was something that I just I didn't get depressed when he wasn't going to let me do that. When your father was telling you on that Sunday about no longer playing tennis and taking these business courses, were you still hoping that your mother would shoot your father? No, I didn't think that that would happen at that point. At that at that point, a year later. Okay, so this was a year after she bought the gun. So you're telling us that you considered taking your own life, but you didn't consider homicide. Is that correct? The thought that my father could be killed by me was I can't even describe the word. The thought that my father could die was unimaginable to me in the sense that I could kill my father. My father was larger than life, powerful, mighty person, and what was I? I had nothing, never done anything, and I didn't even think at that point that no. It wasn't imaginable to you in 10 days later when you pulled it off, was it? When I was running into that room, I couldn't believe that I could kill my father. I could not believe it. When I came back to the house that night right before my father called 911, I looked at my father. I couldn't believe he was dead. When I was with Sergeant Edmonds, I could not believe that he was dead. Did you just expect to wound him a little bit with those shotgun shells as you were running into the room? When I was running into the room, I was just trying to stop him from killing me. If I would have seriously thought about it, I would have froze and been and shaking too much to have gone into that room. You didn't think you could kill him. You expected only to wound him. Is that what you're telling us? I didn't think about it at that time. Thoughts weren't going through my mind. I was reacting to the situation. Had I thought about it, I would have froze. I always did. All right. Well, we'll get to that later. So on Sunday, you started to pack a bag. Mr. Levin says, objection, Your Honor. Ask that comment be stricken. Court says, all right, the comment of counsel is stricken. What did he say? Um, I don't know what he said. All right. He says that the court says ask the question again. Mr. Khan says, so you started to pack a bag that Sunday to go to a friend's house for a few days. Is that correct? Yes. Mr. Menendez, didn't you tell us that you could never contemplate leaving your house? Never contemplate running away from my father. But you could contemplate going away for a few days? One, it's not running away. And two, I think what I said was this was not a serious thought. That at that point I felt dead and I just wanted to leave. When my mother came home, my mother came into my room and said, "You're not going anywhere." I didn't have to will the fight. I didn't have the will to fight it because I knew that it wouldn't lead to anything. So you could contemplate going away for a few days, is that correct? No, that frame of mind. After I'd already been told this by my father, this things started to matter less and less to me, and the fact that I might want to run away or go to a friend's for a few days, and my dad's maybe would beat me up for it. Just I didn't care anymore. My question to you, Mr. Menendez, is: you were able to contemplate going away for a few days? Yes or no? Yes. How many days could you contemplate going away for? I didn't give it serious consideration. I didn't even think about whose house I would go to. But, well, did you think that you could go away for 3 days? I clearly would have been able to go away for 3 days. My dad just wouldn't let me do it. He would not have been able to. I'm sorry. I clearly would not have been able to go away for 3 days. My dad just would not let me do it. And he told me that that very clearly when he came into my room a few minutes later. I'm talking about before your father came into the room, you contemplated you were going to pack a bag and go away for a little while. Is that correct? It it went into my mind and I said, I'm leaving. And yes. And you were able to do it. You were able to pack a bag, weren't you? Yes. And if your mother hadn't stopped you, you're telling us that you would have went out the door. Is that correct? I don't know. I might actually have done it. You actually had the ability to pack a bag and walk out the door. Isn't that correct? At that time, I was already dead and I just said I'm leaving. I guess. You weren't dead, were you, Mr. Menendez? I felt dead. You felt depressed. No, I felt dead. Okay, did you feel dead enough that you couldn't pack a bag and walk out the door? I think that's why I was able to pack a bag and think about walking out the door. If my mom hadn't come to the room, I might have actually gone over to one of my friends' houses. I don't know what that would have led to, but that might have happened. And you felt that you were capable of leaving for a few days. Is that correct? Are we seriously asking this question again? Can we say asked and answered? I didn't give it serious consideration. You gave self-unaliving serious consideration, but you didn't consider going to a friend's house for a few days serious consideration. It flashed in my mind, and I decided to do it. I didn't weigh it, didn't think about it rationally. It just something that I did. There were moments when you have a tremendous amount of initiative, aren't there, Mr. Menendez? Objection, argumentative, sustained. Were there moments when you had tremendous amounts of initiative? Objection and vague. Sustained, says the court. Mr. Khan says there were times while this was going on when you were able to make decisions on your own. Vague as to time. Objection. When is it going on? Overruled. What do you mean? Sunday? Mr. Khan says, weren't you able to come and go as you pleased on Sunday? There wasn't a restriction on me. And you were able to come and go as you pleased on Monday, is that correct? Yes. And Tuesday? Yes. And Wednesday? Yes. Thursday? Correct. Yes. You were not a little boy being kept in a closet, were you, Mr. Menendez? No. That just proves that you don't understand shit about the effects of abuse. So, calling it like he's a little boy, like he can't deal with manly stuff, like men abusing other men? What? Like, why are you on the abuser side, it seems? So you were not a little boy kept in a closet, were you? He says no. Is that the kind of impression you're trying to create to this jury that psychologically you were a little boy kept in the closet? Objection, argumentative. The court sustains that. I want to pause right here and say I, I believe his emotional maturity level, his development level is at about an 8-year-old or something, 12-year-old maybe at the max. Maybe Lyle's is 12 and his is 8. I can't remember, but something like that. With all the abuse, all the effects of abuse, long-term abuse from the times that they were little up until their adulthood can seriously affect your psyche. And to reduce it to you're just acting like a little boy kept in the closet. Like what? Is he supposed to not Can you lay down, please? Thank you. Is he supposed to not talk about his um, abuse or be affected by it in any way. It seems like, you're just supposed to sit there and take it. According to this prosecutor, oh, your dad was going to abuse you more, right? Oh, okay. But you're horrible because you were angry because he wanted to abuse you or whatever. Like he twists everything and then he makes them seem like they're lying, like they're faking being children or something when we know. And Burgess from Dr. Burgess from the first trial, we listened to her testimony and she made it abundantly clear that people who are in this long-term abusive cycle often develop slowly or don't develop all the way. Um, is that the kind of impression you're trying to create to this jury that psychologically you were just a little boy kept in the closet? Objection, argumentative, sustained. Are you trying to portray yourself as a boy, Mr. Menendez? It's argumentative, Your Honor. Overruled. I've I have tried my best to tell what happened in my life. I'm not trying to portray myself in any way other than simply telling the things that Mr. Levin asked me that he thinks will explain my life. Are you trying to portray yourself as helpless, Mr. Menendez? Objection with respect to no, says the witness. The term portray. Overruled. Mr. Menendez, you weren't helpless when you went shopping for shotguns 2 days before you killed your parents, were you? I did it. I don't know what you mean by helpless. I certainly was able to do it. And you had the energy and you had the free will to go out and purchase shotguns to kill people, didn't you? I had the free will. So now you packed your bags and your mother came inside the room. And what did she say to you? Something along the lines of, where do you think you're going? I said to a friend's house for a few days. She said, no, you're not going anywhere. You're not leaving this house, and started throwing clothes out of my bag. Then what happened next? A very short time later, she left. Short time later, my dad came into the room. He pushed me up against the window and asked me if I had a problem. I said no. He asked me if I was going anywhere, and I said no. And then he told me that I better be there when I got back in a few days, when he got back in a few days, and that he'd deal with me then. So he must have been leaving on business or something. What did you think was going to happen when he came back in a few days? I thought that probably there would be some type of sex. Okay. And did you decide now is the time to get out? No. Well, you were packing your bags before your parents caught you. Is that correct? Right. There was nothing to stop you from packing those bags once again as soon as your father walked out of the room, was there? Except what was going on in my mind. And you made a decision at that time not to pack your bags and not to leave the home. Is that correct? I didn't even consider it. You no longer thought, should I pack my bags or not? No. I'm sorry? No, I did not. Why not? I just felt that I had made the situation even worse. At some level, I didn't even care that if I was going to have to come home from college days in a week, if I was going to have to come home from college days in a week, that it didn't matter to me anymore and nothing really in my life mattered to me anymore and all of the steam, the energy went out of me. And my father said that to me after my mom had come into the room and I did not consider leaving. You didn't care about what anymore, Mr. Menendez? I didn't care about anything. You didn't care about living or dying anymore, is that correct? Right. And when you reach that point when you no longer care about living or dying, don't you also reach that point where you could tell your father, listen, I'm going to do what I want to do and you aren't going to stop me? I don't know if you've ever reached that point, but it's a level where you feel so bad inside that it takes a lot of energy and determination to say that to my father. I couldn't imagine those words coming out of my mouth, but it wasn't within me to do it. Okay, so you decided to stay with your father for as long as he wanted to sexually abuse you. Is that correct, Mr. Menendez? I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that this was not going to happen. And you felt that perhaps this would go on for years and years and years. Is that correct, Mr. Menendez? Objection. Witness says, I would never. Mr. Levin says, vague as to time when he had that thought. Overruled. I would never allow that to happen. Why? I would rather be dead than allow that to happen. Why didn't you confront your father and say, kill me now because I'm walking out the door? The amount of strength it would take to do that, the ability to do that, the mindset to be able to say that to my father it's unthinkable. Yeah, you usually don't, people who are abused often don't stand up to their abusers because they've tried it a couple times and they learn that it's not smart. So they don't do it anymore. So you knew you were going to stay for years and years and put up with it. Even after you got married, you were going to have to put up with it, didn't you? I didn't. Absolutely not. You were going to put up with it until the day that your father died. Is that correct? No. He was going to keep abusing you until you were both in your late ages. Is that correct? I would never have let that happen. Why not? Because I would rather be dead. As a human being, I thought I was a coward and I hated myself as much as I did that I would rather be dead. I would rather no longer exist than let that happen. Did you tell yourself that you would rather be dead than to have him continue to assault you even after you became an old man? I didn't need to tell me that. I didn't think of those things. It was something that I was, you were what? I already knew that that's how I felt. It's how I felt. I didn't need to tell myself that. What was how you felt? Dead. I'm asking you, did you tell yourself that you would put up with the abuse only until you became an old man, and at that point you would rather stop it or be killed? I had never considered that it would go on beyond when I left to college. But now you knew that that was wrong. Your father was going to continue to molest you in college. Is that correct? He was. And at that point, you must have reevaluated and you must have said, wait a minute. Up to now, I've been thinking it's going to end. Here I am now, almost 19 years old. My father's going to continue to molest me. It's now time for me to reconsider and decide whether I'm going to allow this to happen all through my college years or I'm going to go out on my own now. I think that Mr. Levin says objection, it's compound and argumentative. Court says sustained as to the form of the question, the answer is stricken. Mr. Khan says, did you decide once you saw that your father was going to continue to molest you that it was time for you to leave your home? I reached a point where when that dream was obliterated, I gave up. You reach a point where you just give up and you lay down and you die, and that's what I wanted to do. Now, you didn't lay down and die. You laid down and killed your father, didn't you? It's what eventually happened. It certainly never crossed my mind that summer. And where did all that energy come from, Mr. Menendez, to kill your father instead of walking out the door? Where did all the energy come from? What a stupid question. Yes, talking to Lyle on Tuesday and realizing that I had hope and then getting a hope inside of me that maybe I could live and telling Lyle that if he left me that I would certainly die and seeing Lyle stick by my side and not abandon me, these things gave me hope. I was no longer alone. I had thrust my brother into the middle of this and that gave me strength. So you're telling us that you have the energy and the initiative and the power to kill someone, but you don't have the energy and the initiative and the power to walk out the door. Is that correct? Objection. It's argumentative. And why does it have to be either or? Like, this guy is in pain. He's literally traumatized from everything that's happening to him in his life. He can't think logically. You don't think logically when you're in a traumatic situation like that. You just feel trapped and alone and scared, and you do want to die. Okay, so when your father walked out on the when your father walked out of the room on Sunday and you knew that that sexual abuse was going to continue, how long did you think it would continue for? All I knew is that it would continue when I was in college the first year, and I would not let that happen. I can't tell you how the feeling of dead feels. It just I couldn't let it go on. I knew that it would continue on in college, and that's all I needed to know. So just the first year it was going to continue for, I didn't even think longer than that. I just knew that it would continue or it would continue on when I was in college and that I couldn't let that happen. And because you couldn't let that happen, you started to think about options. Is that correct? I gave up and I felt you're right. That did cross my mind to tell Lyle at one point that night, but I didn't give it serious consideration. I gave up. And it wasn't till I saw the altercation with Mom and Lyle in the foyer and I was in Lyle's guest house, that I just decided to tell him. Well, isn't it true that rather than giving up or rather than having the thoughts of taking your own life, you became homicidal? Objection. It's argumentative. Overruled, of course. No. You shot your parents to death, didn't you? I did. Let's go to Tuesday. You said that on Tuesday your mother pulled the hairpiece off your brother's head. Is that correct? She did. Now, are there any witnesses to this, Mr. Menendez, other than you, Lyle Menendez, and the woman that you shot to death? Objection. It's argumentative. Overruled. They really should not be asking the questions that way, but this court allows it, so whatever. They're getting away with it. The witness says, I know that it's in the records that Lyle went and got his new hair clips, and Mr. Khan says, motion to strike as non-responsive. Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, it answers the question. He asked if there are any witnesses, and the witness is entitled to answer. The court says, well, this is not responsive to the question whether there were witnesses who were there and saw this. But it is proof that, whatever, okay? Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, I object. I objected to that question. The court allowed it. He asked him if there were any witnesses to this. The court says yes, and this being the incident that he referred to, the removing of the hairpiece. The witness says, no, there was no one else physically watching me at that time. Mr. Khan says, the only other witness other than your brother is the woman that you shot to death 5 days later. Is that correct? My mom. Okay, but this really happened. Is that correct? There's no question that it happened. And we have your word for that. Is that correct? Well, you know that Lyle went to the hairpiece center to get new clips because his hairpiece had been torn off. Does that prove a visit to the hairpiece center? Does that prove what happened 5 days earlier? Objection. It's argumentative. Overruled. It was 2 days earlier, or a day earlier, says the witness. Mr. Khan says, wasn't it on Tuesday? Mr. Khan says, objection, Your Honor. The witness has not completed his answer. The court says, have you finished your answer? Yes. The court says, your next question. Mr. Khan says, was it on Tuesday that this took place? Yes. And you killed your parents the following Sunday? Yes. And that was 5 days later? Right. Did you accompany your brother to the hair replacement center? No, I did not. Did you know that your brother made periodic visits to a hair replacement center? I knew that he was going that day, that he went to on Thursday because his hairpiece could no longer stay on his head. Which day did he go? I believe it was Thursday. Thursday of that week? Yes. That is before you killed your parents. Right. Did you accompany him? No, I did not. You're not a witness to that? No, I was not. Now, isn't it a fact, Mr. Menendez, that you admitted to Jamie Pisarcik that you knew that your brother had this hairpiece? I never admitted to Jamie Pisarcik. I was not good enough friends or close enough to Jamie Pisarcik to tell her or to talk about such things. You were not present when there was a conversation between you and Jamie Pisarcik in which there was a conversation about your brother's hairpiece and your knowledge of that hairpiece before it was turned off your brother's head. That never happened. That is a conversation between yourself and Jamie Pisarcik. Is that correct? Right. Now, you said that you did hear snippets of conversation about your brother's hairpiece. Is that correct? Objection assumes facts not in evidence, misstates the testimony. The court says, well, it doesn't track his testimony verbatim. No objection sustained. Or so objection sustained. Mr. Levin says he used the word hairpiece. The court says you also snippets of conversation. So objection sustained. Mr. Khan says, in this, had you ever heard anything about your brother having a hairpiece prior to the time that your mother allegedly tore this hairpiece off of his head? I didn't know exactly what a hairpiece was. I had no concern of. Objection, non-responsive, sustained. Motion to strike. Motion to strike is granted. So easily he grants all of the state's motions, but everything else is, all the objections on the defense's side overruled. Mr. Khan says, listen to the question, Mr. Menendez. Had you heard any conversation concerning your brother's hairpiece after your mother allegedly tore this hairpiece off your brother's head? After she tore it off? Before it was torn off the head. I heard conversations about, and it had to do with my brother's hair, but I didn't hear the word hairpiece. So he probably heard like whispers and stuff talking about Lyle's hair, but he never understood why people were talking about it, probably. And what conversation had you heard about your brother's hair before the hairpiece was allegedly torn off your brother's head? I had heard something about $3,000 and going down to Alabama to do something with his hair, and little bits of conversation along those lines. And I didn't understand what exactly he was going to do or why, or whether it was, I didn't know what implants were at that time versus a wig versus a hairpiece. I didn't know these things. I just knew that he was having something done to his hair. And I want to point out his hair was all falling out and he was bald on top by 19 years old because of having to live up to Jose's expectations. When was it that you heard these conversations? Years before. How many years before? 2 or 3 years before. And who was speaking? My mother. I heard her say things. I don't remember if it was my father. I heard my brother say things like this. You heard your brother talking about it? Well, my brother was speaking to my mother. In your presence. No, I was walking by the room. I wasn't in the room. Now, you noticed that your brother began to lose some of his hair at a certain age, didn't you? It never occurred to me that my brother could be losing his hair at 16. It just never, I couldn't fathom it. I had never heard of such a thing, and so I didn't think my brother was losing his hair. Are you saying that you never sensed that your brother was losing his hair up until the time that your mother allegedly tore this hairpiece off of his head? I knew that I didn't see him for 8 months, and I knew his hair was suddenly fuller and a lot better hair, but I didn't know what he had done to it. I didn't think that my brother was losing it at 16. Now, you said that you didn't see him for 8 months. Which 8 months are you referring to? When I moved out, when I moved out to California, I didn't see him for about 8 months. And then when you saw him again 8 months later, you noticed that suddenly he had a fuller head of hair. Is that correct? Right. So his hair must have been thinner prior to the time that you observed him then. Is that correct? No, it wasn't thinner. When you saw him 8 months later and suddenly he had a full head of hair, didn't you ask him at the time, "Hey Lyle, what's with your hair?" I didn't have I didn't have the ability to say that to Lyle. It was a personal issue and I wasn't going to touch it. I knew that he had something, or had something. I didn't know the particulars and I wasn't going to even go near it. So you felt that that was something that you couldn't even talk about with your brother. Is that correct? Had I really, really, really wanted to, I could have, but I didn't. I felt that it was maybe embarrassing or just a personal issue. And if he wanted me to know, he would tell me. So he was respecting his privacy. So did you go to your mother and ask your mother, "Hey, what's with my brother's hair?" Suddenly, he has a full head of hair. I haven't seen him in 8 months. No. Why didn't you ask your mother why your brother suddenly had a full head of hair? Because it didn't occur. I didn't have a reason to. You weren't curious about why your brother had suddenly had a full head of hair? Oh, I was curious, and I saw him in the bathroom fixing it, and he had these different supplies, and I looked at his supplies to try to figure out what was going on. I would look at him when he was playing tennis or in the swimming pool, and I would say, "Wow, it's amazing." It was nobody knew, and he would play tennis with us. He would go swimming, and I just couldn't imagine that what happened, what it was. And well, were you so curious that you asked your father what's the story with Lyle's hair? No, I never would have asked my father. Why not? I just didn't have that relationship with my father. Hey, Dad, let's talk about Lyle's hair. You felt that you couldn't ask your father or your mother about Lyle's hair. I suppose I could have had I really wanted to get into the personal particulars of the issue, but there were just a lot of embarrassing things in the family, a lot of secrets, and these things weren't discussed among all the family members. Secrets, secrets. Isn't it a fact, Mr. Menendez, that being Lyle's brother, you knew about the hair and you told Jamie Pisarcik you knew about the hair? If I knew about the hair and I told Jamie Pisarcik, I'd tell you. And he laughs. Or there was laughter in the room. I don't know. I don't know who laughed. Mr. Levin says, objection, Your Honor, with respect to counsel's comments and the prosecution's section that are laughing. Oh, the prosecution section is laughing. The court says, all right, let's not have any reaction from the audience in this matter. Go ahead, Mr. Khan. Your next question, please. Mr. Khan says, you said after your mother tore the hairpiece off your brother's head, you followed your brother to the guest house where he fixed it. Is that correct? Soon after I went to the guest house. Well, what did you see your brother do to his hair at the guest house? It was already on top of his head and he was fixing it. Was he bleeding? I don't remember if he was bleeding. At that point, he had his hair back on his head and he was just fixing his hair in the bathroom. And you did not accompany him anywhere at any time to repair the damage, is that correct? I didn't personally accompany him. Now, it was at this time, you tell us, that you decided to tell your brother, after all these years, that your father had been sexually abusing you. Is that correct? I have to say it like a jerky prosecutor. Eventually I led up to it in the conversation. Why did you suddenly decide to tell your brother after all these years why your father had been sexually abusing you? I was at a point after it was now Tuesday, and what had happened with my father was on Sunday, and I was really adrift, really extremely miserable. And I just saw an unbelievable event occur in my foyer where my mother ripped off Lyle's hair, and he was embarrassed, I felt. And I was just telling him that I still loved him, that I didn't care, that it didn't make a difference. And I just started to cry, and I just decided to tell him. I needed help, and I thought about telling him. I can't give a good reason why. And your father's, because you both were in a vulnerable position, and that vulnerability led you to open up to him. That's why. Your father said, and your brother said, that he would speak to your father. Is that correct? Well, at first, he was angry at me. And objection, motion to strike, says Mr. Khan, non responsive. Overruled, says the court. Continue your answer. The witness says, first, he was angry at me and asked me if I enjoyed it and all different types of things that hurt me. And then eventually, when I kept saying no, 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 he was angry and he was pacing and he said, I'm going to talk to Dad. It's never going to happen again. He was outraged and upset at himself. Mr. Khan says, and you thought that would be a good idea if your brother went to your father and spoke to your father about the sexual abuse. Is that correct? I thought it could definitely cause problems, and I tried to tell Lyle, Dad's not going to be too happy about this, but I didn't want to tell Lyle the extent that I felt Dad would be unhappy. But Lyle was closer to my dad, knew my dad better, and I felt motion to strike, objection, non-responsive. Your Honor, it is responsive, says Mr. Levin. The court says, well, it's getting to be a non responsive answer at this point. Get fucked all the way, Stanley, Weisberg, and Mr. Khan, for these questions and for allowing these questions. He's answered the question. And the prosecutor's like, no, I don't like your answer, so I move to strike it. What? Your next question, please, Mr. Khan says. Mr. Menendez, did you think it would be a good idea for your brother to speak to your father about the abuse? I can't answer that question, Mr. Khan. Let me try another way. Did you want your brother to talk to your father about the sexual abuse? I wanted my brother to help me end it, and he said that he would just talk to Dad. I had a lot of trepidation about it, but Lyle thought it would work, and I was anxious and worried about it. But objection, motion to strike. Oh my God, he answered the question. He's still talking too. The witness says, I was going to let him do it. Mr. Khan says, non-responsive with a narrative answer. The court says the answer will stand. Your next question, please. Now, your father had previously threatened you that if you told anyone, he would not only kill you, but he would kill the person that you told. Is that correct? Yes. And you took your father very seriously, didn't you? Very seriously. And you knew that your father would carry through with his threats, right? I believed he would. In fact, didn't your father threaten you tell us, to tie you to a chair and beat you to death? Right. And you believed that he would do that, didn't you? I knew he was certainly capable of it. Did you believe that if you told someone, your father would tie you to a chair and beat you to death? Told me that when I was 12 and I believed it. When I was anxious, I thought he would kill me. I didn't know how he would do it. I just felt that he would. But you knew, you believed. We're talking about the state of mind when you were 18 years old. You were having this conversation with Lyle Menendez. You believed at this time that if you told Lyle Menendez about the abuse, your father would beat you to death or kill you in some way. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, and you also believed that your father would kill your brother, Lyle Menendez. Is that correct? Right. Now, how'd you feel about Lyle Menendez when you were having this conversation with him on Tuesday? I loved him tremendously. He was the single most important person in my life. Did you love him enough, Mr. Menendez, to tell him, by the way, my father previously told me that if I were to tell someone about this, he would not only kill me, but he will kill also the person that I tell? I did not tell him that. I regretted it later. Why not? I did not do it because I was afraid that he would not help. Mr. Menendez, if your father was this powerful man that you tell us, and if you were truly in fear of your father beating you to death and beating your brother to death, why wouldn't you tell your brother of the danger involved? Objection, argumentative, sustained. Why didn't you tell your brother of the danger involved? Because I didn't want my brother to say my life's going well. This is a bad situation between you and Dad. I'm going off to college or to Princeton. Good luck. I was at a point where he was my last hope and I was out of options and I needed his help and I felt that if I gave him the full story, I might not get it. So you were willing to put your brother in a life-threatening situation and not give him all the facts simply so perhaps he could talk to your father about the abuse? You're right. Is that how much you love your brother? And I regret doing it. And that's why I'm here today. And that's why he's in jail. And I've destroyed his life as a result. It's something I wish I could have gone back and not done. Well, you're here today because you killed your parents. Isn't that why you're here? That is the end of what happened. You're not here today because of a conversation that you had with Lyle Menendez on Tuesday, are you? Had I not, objection as argumentative, Your Honor, overruled. Had I not had that conversation and had I not gotten my brother into this, I wouldn't have destroyed his life. Did you think it was fair to warn your brother of the danger involved? It's what I should have done. I'm not saying what you should have done. I'm saying at the time, Mr. Menendez, did you feel it was safe or fair to warn your brother of the danger involved? Objection, argumentative, overruled. I don't know what you mean by fair. At the time, I felt that I probably should, and I was trying to by saying, Dad's not going to be too happy about this. He might not be thrilled that you know this stuff, and I was trying to be facetious so that he would understand that there's more of a concern. But he was so optimistic that he would handle it, that Dad would listen to him, and that he would take care of it for me. I didn't want to burst his bubble. I wanted to be inside of it. You didn't want to burst his bubble. He was so optimistic, and I wanted to be part of that for him, or part of that optimism. Court says, all right, let's take our recess and we'll resume in 10 minutes. Okay, we're back. Let's have the jury out. They enter. The court says, the jury is back in court. We'll continue the cross examination. Mr. Khan says, thank you. By the way, this is a half day, so we're reading the full half day, and then next week will be on December 20th. Now, Mr. Menendez, it was on Wednesday, the day after the alleged hairpiece incident, that you went with your brother to have lunch somewhere. Is that correct? Yes. And at that time, you had a conversation with your brother in which he said that he had spoken to your mother and told your mother that he wanted to speak to your father upon his return. Is that correct? Someone spoke to someone, just spoke to someone who spoke to someone who spoke to someone else. That's all I got from that question. Right. No, something about the a mother with the brother in which she said he had spoken to your mother. So he spoke to Lyle. Lyle told him that he spoke to Kitty, and Kitty said that Dad wants to speak to you when he gets home. Right. And now you told us that your mother was a very irrational and unpredictable person. Is that correct? She wasn't always irrational. She was unpredictable for sure, though. And she was sometimes irrational. Yes. And other times rational? Yes. When would she be rational? I don't know how to answer that. She would be rational. She was a mother. I mean, she rarely was irrational throughout her life. Okay, we're gonna have to pause because my dogs are playing real rough on the couch and they're probably gonna bump into everything. So, all right, they calmed down, but it might just be for a drink of water. I'm not sure. Um, So when would she be rational? I don't know how to answer that. She would be rational. She was a mother. I mean, she rarely was irrational throughout her life. You said she was irrational. Is that correct? Maybe I misunderstood. Sometimes she was irrational, and sometimes she was rational. Right. And on what occasions would she be irrational rather than rational? When I think about it in terms of her being drunk, or I think of it in terms of childhood incidences where someone had to take the blame for my father, and those were the times that I think about. When she came to California, would you say that she was rational most of the time? Yes. Except for those occasions when you felt that she was trying to poison the family, and other occasions when she was angry, wanting to take her own life, extremely depressed, very angry at life. So, did you ask your brother what would he have, there's a bug flying around my face. I'm getting mad. Would you, did you tell your, did you ask your brother what would he have to gain by telling your mother that he wanted to speak to your father? No, I didn't. Did that strike you as odd that he would tell your mother that he would want to speak to your father? No, it concerned me. It didn't strike me as odd. Did you see any reason for your brother to tell your mother that he wanted to speak to your father upon his return? Calls for speculation, Your Honor. Overruled. The witness says he didn't tell me about the conversation he had had, so I didn't know. My question is, did you see any reason at the time for your brother to have told your mother that he wanted to speak to your father upon his return? No. And you didn't ask him, "What did you do that for, Lyle?" You're just going to tip off uh, father that something's up. I didn't say that. I said other things. Did you think that? No. I was more concerned about how much he had told him. Now, it was on Thursday that your father was to be confronted by your brother. Is that correct? Yes. Now, Wednesday, when you were having lunch with your brother, did you tell him about how dangerous a man your father was? No. Again, I tried to. I tried to warn him in vague terms, but I did not reveal the extent of it. No. Why did you want to keep it vague? Because I didn't want to tell him too much about it. I didn't want him to lose his optimism and I didn't want him to leave. And so, did you decide at that point that whenever your brother talked to your father, you better be nearby because for all you know, your father might try to kill your brother at that time of the conversation? It's just the opposite. I wanted to be as far away as I could. Why? If he killed your brother, so you could at least get away? I thought it might not go well. It might be an explosion, and I wanted to be away from the house so that you could save yourself. Right. And so, were you planning on waiting until you spoke to Lyle to make sure that he was alive after the conversation? I didn't think he would be dead. I didn't know what was going to happen. Lyle was telling me things were going to go well, so I was cautious and hopeful. Mr. Menendez, in light of everything that your father allegedly told you and did to you, why did you think your father would kill your brother upon the spot Thursday? I just didn't think that. I mean, there was no reason that my dad said these things to me and meant them. Wait, what? There was no question. Oh, no, there was no question that my dad said these things to me and meant them. My brother had a relationship with my father that I didn't have. He seemed to have the ability to talk to my dad in ways that I never could. And I just believed that I was hopeful that I would be successful or that he would be successful and things would work out. I was worried that they wouldn't. So he was hopeful but worried. Well, when you say that your brother got along better with your father than you did, that's only because your brother had never confronted him the way that he was planning on confronting him on Thursday. Is that correct? No, apparently he had confronted him earlier in life. And did you know that? I knew my father had beaten me up as a result of it. I don't know if I knew that then or if Lyle told me afterwards. So you didn't know at the time that you had the conversation with your brother at the restaurant on Wednesday that your brother had ever confronted your father about sexually molesting you. I believe that he had. Whether or not I knew it for certain until afterwards, I am not sure, but my dad had punished me severely for what he felt Lyle was telling me him or for what he felt Lyle was telling him. So I believe that Lyle had done this and had confronted him then, but I didn't know for certain. Well, it was after that early confrontation during your youth between your brother and your father that your father began to threaten you that if you ever told anyone, he would kill you. Is that correct? Right. And you believe that to be true, right? And you believe that, oh, sorry, I did. And you believed that he would also kill the person that you told it to. Is that correct? Yes. So, when you thought that your brother was going to have the conversation with your father on Thursday night, did you decide that he would or that you would then call into your home to find out if your brother was still alive before returning home on Thursday night? No, I didn't think that I would be able to call in. My dad may very well pick up the line. I just knew he was going to be home. But you were going home not knowing whether your brother had already been killed by your father or not. Is that correct? I didn't believe that my father would just kill my brother on the spot. I didn't know that would happen or what would happen. I was concerned about it. I felt that he would blow up and get extremely angry, and I was hoping that it would work out. I didn't know what would happen. Why didn't you think that your father would kill your brother on the spot? I don't know. I just didn't think that. He's already answered these questions. This is annoying because this prosecutor just gets to keep asking the same questions over and over again. He's already answered this question. Why didn't you think your father would kill your brother? Because my brother had a better relationship with him. Done. Answered. Moving on. Objection, Your Honor. It's argumentative and also would call for speculation. The court says, all right, he's answered the question. Mr. Khan says, did you think through the implications of the story that you told the jury that your father was a dangerous man who had threatened your life and the life of the person that you told? Objection, it's argumentative. Sustained. Mr. Khan says, on Wednesday, as you were sitting there having lunch with your brother, did you think through what you have told us here in court, that your father was a man who had threatened to kill anyone that you told the secret to? On Wednesday, did I think through that? Yes, on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I was concerned that would happen. I was hoping that good things would happen. The alternative was me not living anyway, so it was my only option, and I was hopeful that it would work. The question was, did you think through the implications that your father said that he would kill anyone that you told the secret to? Now your brother was going to meet with your father Thursday night. Is that correct? Yes. And did you put that together and say, therefore, my father might kill my brother Thursday night? Did you put that together? I'm not sure that I put that together at that time, that he might kill Lyle Thursday night. Why not? Objection, that would call for speculation. Overruled. Maybe I didn't want to think about, maybe I didn't want to think about it. I don't know why. Is that because you're making this up and none of this ever took place? Argumentative, Your Honor. The witness says, everything I'm saying happened. Overruled. Happened, says the witness. Mr. Khan says, now you said that you became alarmed when you heard that your father was late arriving home Thursday night. Is that correct? I don't know whether I said I was alarmed or not. I continually called in and my brother told me he was arriving later and later and later. Now, you didn't want to be present at the time that your brother had the conversation with your father. For what reason? Because I felt my father would get extremely angry and might want to confront me. And do what? I didn't know, but I didn't want to be around for it. Did you think that he would be then cool down if you were not present and it would be safe for you to return home? I didn't think about that. Did you think it would be safer if you arrived after he had the conversation with your brother than if you were present while he had the conversation with your brother? I didn't know if I would be safer, but I knew I felt much more comfortable not being in the house. Why? Because I did not want to be there when my brother told my dad that he knew about this unbelievable secret, and I didn't want to be there. My dad would suddenly focus on me and come after me. I didn't want to be there. Didn't you think your father would be equally angry when you returned home a half hour later or an hour later? It depended on how the conversation with Lyle went. But assuming he was angry, which is what you're assuming, that he would be angry when he spoke to your brother, didn't it seem reasonable that he would be equally angry when you returned home an hour or a half earlier? An hour or a half hour later? I didn't know that dad was going to be angry. Lyle said he was certain in his eyes that things would work out, and I was living off of that optimism. Well, then why didn't you want to be present at the time that the conversation took place? Because I wasn't and I wasn't as optimistic as Lyle was, he says. And you believed there might be a violent reaction from your father, is that correct? I thought there might be. And con- you didn't conclude that if there was going to be a violent reaction from your father, if you were around, there was probably going to be a violent reaction from your father when you returned a half hour or an hour later. I felt there might be. Okay. And so, did you decide that then it would be better to call to Lyle before you returned home Thursday night? No. Didn't you want advance notice as to how angry your father was or whether, in fact, your brother was still alive? Yes, I did. And so, why didn't you call in and speak to your brother Lyle before coming home? I lost my place. Because the phones rang on all lines, and I wouldn't just be able to speak to Lyle. My mom or dad may pick up the phone. I wasn't going to call home. I was just going to go home and talk to Lyle myself. My dog just came in, tried to grab a bone, and he's taking it outside. It's a nice day, so I've been leaving the door open a crack so they can just go in and out. And the puppy just came in, found a bone, and grabbed it and went outside with it. Okay. Didn't you want to find out if he was still alive before you came home? I didn't think he was dead. And you had no reason to know either way. Is that what you're telling us? I don't understand what you mean. So you don't recall whether or not you became alarmed about your father being late returning from his trip on Thursday. I don't recall ever saying that. Okay, so you, as far as you recall today, you felt no sense of alarm about the fact that your father was late returning from his trip on Thursday. Is that correct? I was anxious throughout the entire day. And the fact that the flight kept getting delayed, it just made my anxiety build and build because the hours were going by and I was still anxious. But there was nothing about your father returning late on Thursday that caused you some additional concern, was there? No. And you never had any concerns with your brother or on Thursday about the fact that your father being late that day caused either you or your brother any additional concern. Is that correct? You mean when I called home and spoke to Lyle on the phone? Yes. How many times did you call home and speak to your brother Lyle? Several times. Even though it would be picked up on the same line that your mother can pick up the phone? Yes. And why would you be willing to do that if your mother could pick up the phone? Because my dad wasn't home. And when she picked up the phone one time, I hung up. But my dad wasn't home, so I was willing to do that. And what conversation did you have with your brother when you spoke to him on Thursday when you called him? Just the fact that dad's flight was getting delayed later and later, and he didn't know why. He didn't know what that meant. And did either you or your brother express to each other any alarm concerning that? I didn't know what it meant. I don't know whether it concerned me. I mean, I didn't know what it meant. Dad's flight was supposed to be home. He was supposed to be home at 6. Suddenly, it's getting to be 8, 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and obviously my anxiety is increasing. You have heard of planes being late before, haven't you? Yes. So it didn't necessarily mean anything. It just meant a late plane. Is that correct? It didn't necessarily mean anything, exactly. And you weren't particularly concerned just because the flight was late, were you? I didn't know what it meant, him arriving later than he was supposed to, and why a plane would get delayed 6 hours. But at least you never expressed any alarm to your brother about the fact that the plane was late. Is that correct? The word alarm, I don't know what you mean by that. Concern. Obviously, Lyle and I talked about, well, at least I would ask Lyle, what does it mean? Why is he not home yet? Why is he getting home later and later? What information did you get from mom? These types of things. Did you express any concern to your brother about the plane being late? I expressed what I just said. Did your brother express any concern to you about the plane being late? I don't remember. When you expressed your concern to your brother, did your brother say to you, hey, sometimes planes are just late? What's the deal? Or what's the big deal? Hi, everyone. So, I this is another long one, so I had to do multiple recordings and splice them together, so I look different now, but we're going to continue on right where we left off. So, the question was, and when you expressed your concern to your brother, did your brother say to you, hey, sometimes planes are just late? What's the big deal? I'm sure he brought it up, or he brought that up. Maybe his plane is just late. And is that the way you left it, perhaps? His plane is just late? We left it at my dad's going to be home at this time, so when are you going to arrive? And I said about an hour later. But as far as the plane being late is concerned, did you find it resolved that it's just a plane being late, nothing to worry about? I don't remember. It wasn't a concern that night. My dad's plane had nothing to do with it. It was just the fact that he kept saying he was late and it was repeatedly getting delayed, so it was making him more and more anxious. When you called in, what line did you call in on? I don't remember. Now, you had a telephone line that was separate from your parents' telephone line? Right. There were 3 lines in the house. And your brother had a telephone line that was separate from your parents' line. It wasn't the same number, if that's what you mean. It was 3 different telephone numbers, correct? Right. One telephone number for your parents, one for you, and one for your brother. Is that correct? No, it was one for the main house where everyone could call into, and then there was a third line that would specifically go to my bedroom. But also, it also went throughout the house, and there was another line that also went into the guest house. But they were all under the same telephone number? No, I don't know. I don't remember the telephone numbers. There were 3 different numbers. So you had your own telephone number, is that correct? Either it was given to me or I assumed the number in one way or another. That's where my friends usually called in on this line. And your brother had his own telephone number, is that correct? Right. And that's because you and your brother wanted a measure of privacy, and that was something that your parents provided you. Is that correct? I don't know if that was the reason. It's just that it was much easier that with all of us living at the house and phones coming in, calls coming in. So Thursday night, you went home not knowing whether or not your brother had had a conversation with your father. Is that correct? Right. And not knowing whether your brother had been injured in any way by your father. Is that correct? Right. And so, what was the first thing that you did when you got home on Thursday night? I went around the side of the house to take a look at the guest house and see if my brother was still in there. I had already looked inside the study and no one was there, so the conversation had ended by then. You parked in the front? Yes. Is that where you normally parked? Yes. Where did your brother normally park? His car was constantly in the shop. It had a bad transmission, and so he just left it in the main in front of the house. What type of car does your brother drive? An Alfa Romero. I'm sorry? An Alfa Romero. What type of car did you drive? A Ford Escort. What year? 1987 or 88? So you parked in the front and you looked in the study to see if your brother was having a conversation with your father. Right, yes. And when you say that there was no one present in the study, then the you went around the side of the house to check on your brother in the guest house. Is that correct? Yes. And what did you see when you got to the guest house? The main lights were off. Which lights? The main lights. The bottom lights were off and the light in the front room was off. I saw that it was dark. You saw no lights whatsoever from inside the guest house, is that correct? Right. I saw that the lights are off. I remember I have an image of just the guest house being dark. Do you remember that? Do you believe that your brother was not home at the time? Is that correct? I believed at that point that he was not in the guest house. I believed that he was home. His car was in the driveway. I thought he might be having the conversation maybe someplace else in the house with my father, or was in my room waiting for me, or had left a message in my room. But you believed that he was still alive at this point, is that correct? Yes. And you believe that your father did not carry through. Did you believe that the conversation took place by that point? I wasn't sure. but I was hoping that Lyle had finally gotten it over with and told my father so that I could find out what the results were going to be. Did you consider at that point perhaps the conversation took place and your father had killed your brother? No, I didn't really think that. You didn't take those threats seriously. The threats were serious and he meant them, but I didn't believe he would just kill my brother and stab him with a knife as soon as Lyle told him this. That wasn't going to happen. Because you always contemplated that if your father was going to kill someone, he would give them advance notice? No, my father told me just the opposite about that. What would he do? He would talk at the dinner table and teach about the Romans and the battles that they would have and how they would carry them out. And he talked about how you lure someone in to think that it's safe, and then that's when he attacks. And in light of that conversation, did you then consider the possibility that Thursday night your father had already killed your brother? No. This is a conversation that happened when I was in Pennington. What does that have to do with your belief that night? Well, you just asked me. I was trying to answer the question. Did it impact upon your belief that night in any way? That night? No. Did it cause you to believe that your father would take people by surprise if he were to kill them? I don't understand the question. Did that conversation with your father your father had with you when you were very young cause you to believe that Jose Menendez would take people by surprise when he was going to kill them rather than give them advance notice before he would kill them? He said he did that in business and he would be very nice to someone in the office, and I'm talking about killing. Objection, Your Honor. The witness has not answered the question. Court says, well, he is not responding to the question either, so the answer is stricken. Mr. Khan says, did you believe that when your father would kill someone, he would take them by surprise or he would give them some type of advance notice, time before he would kill them? I don't know if time is the right word, but he just said that when you do anything in life to get the best advantage, whether it be in business or on the tennis court or just his lesson in life, is to basically to do that. Mr. Menendez, I am focusing on your belief as to whether or not your father would kill your brother. So your question pertains only to your belief concerning whether or not Lyle Menendez was still alive Thursday night. Now, did you believe that your father would give Lyle Menendez some time to get away after he confronted your father about the abuse? I didn't know, but I was ready for anything. And you were ready for the possibility then, when you went home on Thursday night, that perhaps your brother was already dead? Had that happened, I would have died too. And I believe that anything could have happened. With my father, anything was possible. Okay. What I'm asking you is, were you ready for that possibility? I don't know what you mean by ready. Did I believe that it was one of the possibilities? I don't remember thinking it, but I'm sure that I did. These questions are so stupid. Like, none of it's really actually getting to the meat of anything. It's just like victim blaming and basically calling him a liar. Okay, so having thought about that possibility, then, did you enter your home armed or unarmed? I don't know if I thought about that possibility. Did you just tell us that you did? I said it entered my mind along with a lot of other possibilities of what might happen as a result of this conversation. Right, so having thought about it, Mr. Levin says, objection, Your Honor, the witness was cut off. The court says, let's finish your answer, please. The witness says, and so I entered my house. I was not armed. Mr. Khan says, and having thought about that possibility that perhaps your brother was dead, why did you feel you could enter your house unarmed, knowing that perhaps your father had already killed your brother? Objection, it's argumentative and misstates his testimony. He does not remember thinking that. The court says, overruled? Of course. The witness says, at that point, if my dad killed my brother, what was I going to do? Where was I going to go? My life was over and it didn't matter anymore. He probably would have been next if that had happened. Mr. Khan says, so you were just willing to allow him to kill you Thursday night when you entered your home? Is that correct? I didn't think that was going to happen. Why not? Because I was hoping that the conversation with my brother had worked out and that things were going well. Okay. So you went to your bedroom at that time? Yes. Did you go to sleep? No. You went there to do what? To check to see if there was any word or message from my brother. And did you think that perhaps your brother had gone to sleep in the guest house? No. Why not? Because I assumed that he would be wanting to tell me. I just didn't consider that he was asleep in the guest house. You didn't go up to the guest house and knock on the door before you went to your room and went to sleep? I looked over at the guest house from around the side of the house. I thought he wasn't there. He must be inside the main house. I didn't want to go through all the rooms in the main house. The first thing I wanted to do was check to see if he left me a note or message in my room or was waiting in my room. That's the first thing I did. And when you entered your room and saw he was not waiting, did you lock the door? I always lock the door when I go in my bedroom. And then what happened next? I checked my messages, I believe. I believe I checked for a note, and then I was looking over at the guest house because I saw the light on in the back. And you wanted to see if you had a message from Lyle? Yes. Now, in the phone system in your house, was your mother able to pick up and check your messages as well? What do you mean? What do you have to do to check your messages? Play my answering machine. Okay, and how do you play the answering machine? I don't remember anymore, but I don't think it was complicated. You just walk in and push the replay button or something like that? Yes. And you know that your mother or your father could walk in and push the replay button, don't you? I guess they could have. And yet you left that Lyle Menendez, or you thought that Lyle Menendez would have left a message on that machine about the conversation that he had with your father? No, I doubt I would have believed that. More along the lines of, I'm at such and such place, come here. So they could meet and talk. Okay, and then when you found out that there was no message from your brother, then what? I remember I checked to see if there was a handwritten message on my desk, and I remember looking over at the guest house and seeing a light on in the back. You saw a light on? Yes. Where? From his bedroom, and I believe his bathroom. And was there a light that just came on from the time that you had checked the guest room? Was there a light that just came on? I don't know whether it was a light that I couldn't see from the bottom or whether it was a light that came on between the time. I have no idea. Are you saying that this was a light on the side of the house? No, this was a light inside on in the back. I was on the second floor in my bedroom and it was on the second floor of the guest house, so I could see straight across at that point. When you went to check on Lyle earlier, were you in a position to see that light that had been on? I don't know. I don't think so. So what happened after you saw the light on? I began to wonder if Lyle was actually inside the guest house and I heard my dad coming towards my room. And then what happened? He was pounding on the door, telling me to open the door. Then what happened? I unlatched the door and went to the back of my bedroom. Now, you were fearful before you even unlatched the lock. Is that what you're saying? I was. And you were afraid that your father was going to retaliate. I didn't know what had happened in the conversation, so I didn't know what my father was going to do. He was capable of anything at that point. What did he say when he was banging on the door? Open up the goddamn door. So you knew he was angry? Yes. And he had threatened to kill you before. Is that correct? Yes. He had threatened to tie you to a chair and beat you to death if you told anyone, right? Earlier in my life. All right. And you still believed that to be a valid threat. I thought that he would kill me if he was going to kill me. I had no idea if he was going to tie me to a chair and beat me to death or just shoot me. I had no idea. But you figured in any event he would kill you. If what? If you were to tell the secret. Yes. Okay, so you unlocked the door knowing that your father was going to come into your room and kill you, correct? At that point, I didn't have a choice. So you opened the door knowing that your father was going to come in and kill you, correct? I didn't know what he was going to come in and do. I didn't know he was going to come in and kill me. But you suspected that that was a possibility. It would be nice if I had time to think about it, but he was banging on the door suddenly, and I was faced with the choice of either refusing to open the door or opening the door, so I opened the door. My question to you, Mr. Menendez, is did you suspect that he was going to come into the room and kill you? I don't know. You don't know, sitting here today, whether or not at the time that you unlatched that door, you suspected that your father was going to come into the room and kill you. Objection, he just answered it. Overruled. I knew my father was banging on the door. I knew that he was yelling. He was angry. And I was faced with an option of either opening the door or refusing to open the door. It was a matter of seconds. I didn't have time to think what's he going to do. I just knew that he was angry and I had to open the door. Are you saying that it did not cross your mind that your father was going to enter the room and kill you? If it did, I don't remember. Did it cross your mind that your father was going to enter the room and hurt you in some way? Yes, yes, I'm sure that it did. And what did you suspect he was going to do? I didn't know, but he was angry. So clearly, it wasn't going to be a pleasant altercation. And so you opened the door, and then what happened? He was trying to handle. He tried. He was trying the handle. He tried it again. The door opened, and he burst into the room and started yelling at me. What did he say to you? He said that he had warned me never to tell Lyle, and he had told me never to tell Lyle, and it was all my fault. That now Lyle was going to tell everyone, and he wasn't going to let that happen. Then what happened? I was saying no, he's not going to tell everyone. He's not going to tell anyone. And he was saying yes he is or something along those lines, and then he just told me to shut up and raced towards me. Then what happened? I tried to get over the desk and he threw me over the bed, and as he was coming over to the bed, I threw my hand over and ran out the door. First of all, I just want to kind of break and say all of this seems very credible. He has answers. He has an answer to everything. It doesn't sound like he's making it up. It sounds like when you ask him a question, he's answering to the best that he can. He sounds credible. He sounds reliable. He sounds like he's giving the best answer that he can about his memories. So this infuriates me that this prosecutor is trying to make him out to be like some lying, not incredible witness when his stories are cohesive, they make sense, everything, about when he's being questioned, it's not like he's forced to like think up an answer. He has an answer on the spot, you know what I mean? So he's recalling what he knows or what he remembers. Then what happened? I tried to get over the desk and he threw me over the bed, and he was coming over to the bed and I threw my hand over and ran out the door. So the first thing what happened in reference to the desk? I tried to get over the desk. Was it in your way? Well, it's an L-shaped desk. One side is attached to the wall and then it goes into the bedroom. And then your father threw you on the bed? He grabbed me as I was trying to get over the desk and he threw me on the bed. What happened after he threw you on the bed? I'm unclear because I wasn't looking at him at that point. I was thrown on the bed. He was either on top of me or coming towards me, and somehow I caught him off balance, and I don't know what happened, but I threw my hand over and ran out the door. He threw you on the bed. How did you end up on the bed? He threw me. What do you mean? I'm talking about after he threw you, your body fell on the bed. Is that correct? Yes. And your face, you fell face down on the bed or face up on the bed? I was partly on the bed, partly on the floor. There was a wood part to my bed and the pillows. I was face down, I just remember flinging my arm and pushing him off and running out the door. You pushed your father off? He wasn't on top of me. He was either, it's unclear because I wasn't able to look at him. He was either behind me or grabbing me or something, and I was able to push him away. Your father. Your father was a man who you felt was very big and strong. He was. And were you surprised that you were able to push off your father so easily? Later that night, I was surprised in reflecting on it, but I didn't think about it at the time. It might have been adrenaline, might have been his adrenaline to have self preservation to get out of that situation. The only thing that I thought was, Dad's attacking me. I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to get away. Did your ability to push off your father and get away from him begin to convince you that my father is not that invincible after all? What kind of question is this? Like, it's so victim shaming for these people that have been through enough. These Eric and Lyle have been through quite enough, and then to sit there and like victim shame him on the stand and make it seem, like condescend to him. Like, did your ability to push off your father make you think that he wasn't invincible and you could leave after all? Like, no. Oh, I already answered it. Never occurred to me to leave because he always said he was going to come after me and he would kill me. So I didn't leave. So stop bringing that up. Like, it's so petty and it's such bullshit. I don't know why they keep allowing it, but anyways, that's where we're at. So he says no. This is a photograph of your bedroom 367? Right. Okay, and the desk that you're referring to, is that the desk there on the left? Right here. That's the typewriter. Okay. And you're saying that when your father threw you, when did he throw you? Or where did he throw you? Onto the bed. And you pointed to the area where the jeans are? That way. Were you behind the bed? Apparently the desk comes close to touching the bed, creating a little bit of a blockage there. Is that correct? Exactly. That's why I retreated to that corner. That was his safe space. He could get in the back and his father couldn't necessarily reach him. Are you saying you would be in that corner there behind the desk and the bed? Right. And you retreated to that corner before your father came into the room? Exactly. And then when your father came into the room, how did he grab you? He was here when he was yelling at me, and then he came towards me, and I tried to go over the desk here, and he grabbed me and threw me on the bed. And that's when I was able to push him away when he was right here indicating, or he indicates when he was right here, and I ran out. He was pointing to the picture of his bedroom the whole time there. When you say you try to get over the desk, let me just put this up for a moment so the jury can see it. This is the desk here, is that correct? On the left? Yes, yes. And this is the bed here? Yes. And you went to this area of the room, the corner behind the bed and the desk, is that correct? Yes. Now, when he tried to grab you, did your father step over the bed to get into that corner there? Yes. And then where did you go from there? You tried to come out this way to get over the desk? Yes. So you're saying the L, when you talk about the desk about being L shaped, that L is the front surface here that we are looking at. And then it turns here and goes into the wall. And that's the L. Is that correct? Right. I think the other picture shows it better. Okay. So as your father was standing here, the picture that you're referring to is 62. Is that correct? Yes. How does he know what the exhibit number is? Now, this picture shows the corner here, right? And the room that is shown in the photograph here, is that correct? Yes. All right. So you went over here where all the junk is in this corner, is that correct? No, I don't remember the typewriter coming off the desk as I was trying to go. I remember the typewriter coming off the desk as I was trying to go over the desk. And it's right there that I tried to go over, but the desk was blocking my way. He was able to grab me in time and threw me onto the bed. And that's when I pushed him off. Okay. So I'm saying when you first went into, right after you unlatched the door, you retreated to this corner to the room, where all this junk is. Is that correct? The junk is pushed up against the wall. The picture may not show it, but I think there's about 4 or 5 feet in there of space. Okay, so your father stepped over the bed here to get to you. Is that correct? Yes. And then once he stepped over that bed, he was standing about somewhere here where I am pointing. Is that correct? In photograph 62? As I was trying to get over the desk, he was there. Yes. Okay, and so he grabbed you and he spun around and he threw you on the bed. Is that correct? To my left, on the left side, he grabbed me as I was coming over the desk and he threw me onto the bed. And then again, he threw you onto the bed. What did you do? I landed on the bed and he was coming at me or on top of me at that point, and I pushed him off with my right arm and sprinted out of the room. So he was still in that corner, which is shown in the photograph. Is that correct at the time that you pushed him? I don't know if he was in the corner or coming onto the bed. But in that area, yes. And what was he saying to you, if anything, while he was struggling with you, throwing you on the bed? I don't remember him saying anything. He was being quiet at that time? I don't know if he was quiet. I didn't hear any words from him. Okay, so you ran out of the room, and then what did you do when you ran out of the room? I ran down the stairs and I ran into the den. Now, where were you going as you were running down the stairs? I know I heard the television on. I don't know why I ran into the den, but I was heading towards the guest house. Why were you going to the guest house? Because I thought Lyle might be in the guest house. And was going through the den the fastest way to get to the guest house? There were 3 different ways. You could either go out the living room, you could go out the den, you could go through the dining room or the den into the kitchen out the back way there. The den was generally how we came back in and out of the tennis courts. Well, let me show you the exhibit that has been marked number 5, okay? Now, you came down these stairs here where it says entry. Is that correct? Right. And to get to the guest house, you could have gone through the living room and out those doors here. Is that correct? Yes. Or you could have gone into the den and then out the French doors here. Is that correct? Right. And then the third alternative was to go through where? The breakfast area has French doors on it, and the service area swings open. And what made you choose that particular route through the den? It was the route most generally taken in and out from the tennis court. So you were running as quickly as possible to get away from your father, is that correct? I was running. I was running away from him, yes. As quickly as possible? I don't know what that means. I mean, I believe so, yes. Because you felt that your father was going to either kill you or hurt you very badly. Well, I knew he was attacking me, and I wanted to get away because he threw me on the bed. I was not going to, sex was not going to happen. One way or the other, it was not going to happen. He was going to have to beat me to unconscious before I was going to let that happen. So I don't know how I got him off of me, but I did, and I ran out as fast as I could. When you were running downstairs, you knew your father was coming down after you, didn't you? I thought that he probably was. And when you ran into the den, you assumed your father was still coming after you? Didn't you think that? I didn't hear him in the foyer behind me. And he wasn't right behind me. At the time, I didn't think about why or what. I just knew what was. The one thing in your mind was just to get away from your father as fast as you could. Is that correct? As I was running out of my bedroom? Yes. Yes. And that was still your goal as you were running down the stairs. Is that correct? My goal as I was running down the stairs was to get to the guest house as fast as you could. Yeah, essentially. Like, why are we beating a dead horse with the same freaking questions? I cannot stand this guy's way of questioning. And that was your goal as you burst into the den doors here. Is that correct? The left door to the den was open, the right door was closed. And was that your goal as you burst in through that door? I didn't burst through the door, I went through the opening. But then, but that was my goal, to get out the French doors and go to the guest house as quickly as you possibly could. Is that correct? Unless I encountered Lyle in the den, yes. And you wanted to get from the door here, the entry, to the French door there, where you could then run to the guest house. Is that correct? Yes. How far is it from that door there to the French door that would then take you to the route to the guest house? 10 or 15 feet? I'm not sure. So you ran through the door, and then what happened next? My mother was at the corner of the couch right there. The television was on, and she said something to me as I was on the top side of the table. On the top side of the table, what are you referring to? It's a two-dimensional drawing. It's hard to on the side of the table closer to the doors. Are you referring to this card table there? This table? Yes. Okay. And when you say you were on the top side, what do you mean by the top side? I mean up. I don't have the pointer. You mean north? Yes, north. So as you came through the door, you were somewhere north of that table when you heard your mother speak, correct? Right. And how much further did you have to go to get to the French doors when you heard your mother speak? I had to go around the sofa and out the French doors. I'm not sure. About another 8 feet or so? Yeah, 8, 10 feet. Okay. So, and at that point, what did you hear your mother say? What's the matter with you? And did you tell your mother at that time, sorry, Mom, no time to chat. My father is coming after me? I said, no, nothing. You wouldn't understand. You said, you said that as you were running? As I ran into the den, I looked at her. I didn't think she would be there. And she said, what's the matter with you? I said nothing. You wouldn't understand. And I was going to continue going. And she said, oh, I understand. I understand a lot more than you think. And wait, let me stop you there. Of course you want to stop there because he's about to reveal that she's known about this abuse this whole time. And she's been letting it go on. She hasn't done a damn thing to stop it or protect her kids. So you're saying that you were about north of the coffee table here when you heard your mother ask you what's wrong. Is that correct? I was north of the coffee table. Well, actually, that's the card table, and the coffee table is there in that general area. Okay, and you were 18 years old at the time, right? I was. And were you healthy? Yes. And you run fast, didn't you, at the time? Yes. Okay, how much distance do you think that you traversed when your mother said, what's wrong with you? Why does it matter? Who gives a flying? Who cares? Let's talk about the thing that is important, the thing that she was about to say to him that you cut him off. As soon as I ran in the doors, I was north of the coffee table. I saw her there, and I sort of wasn't expecting to see her. She said, what's the matter with you? I said, nothing, you wouldn't understand. And I was going to keep on going and probably took a couple of steps when she said, oh, I understand. I understand a lot more than you think. And that stopped me. The question I asked, let me repeat it. How much distance do you think that you traversed as you were running as quickly as you could to get away from your father when your mother spoke the words, what's wrong with you? How much distance did I traverse in that sentence? Correct. I don't even know if I moved. Mr. Menendez, you were moving pretty quickly when you went in through those den doors, weren't you? I went into the den doors and saw my mom on the couch, and that's when she said that to me. I don't know if I took a step or two or 3 steps when I saw her there and was surprised to see her there. I don't know how many feet I moved. Are you saying now you stopped to talk to your mother? I never said I didn't. Of course I stopped. She said this to me and it startled me, and I said, what do you mean? And she said what she said, and I took off again. Okay. So after she said, "What's wrong with you?" and you took off again, after she said, "What's wrong with you?" and I said, "No, nothing, you wouldn't understand," and I was going to keep going on to go out the French doors when she said, "Oh, I understand. I understand a lot more than you think." And I paused and I said, "What do you mean? What do you know?" Okay. So you came in through the doors and he might have more to that story that he wanted to add. And you saw your mother and she startled you, is that correct? The fact that she was there, her presence made me pause. And you were trying to get away from your father at the time, is that correct? Get away from my father and go to the guest house. Now, what was it? You have seen your mother sitting in the den before, I take it, on various occasions? Yes. And there was nothing unusual or strange about your mother sitting in the den, is that correct? Well, it was midnight, and I was surprised that she was still there. I thought that she would be in her bedroom. I was a little surprised, a lot surprised to see her there on the couch suddenly in the middle of the night. Is that why you were so startled because your mother was sitting in the den when you thought that she was in her bedroom? I don't know why I was startled. I was jumpy. I was frightened. I was running away from my father, and suddenly my mother was in front of me, and it paused, and I paused at it. And you're saying that the mere presence of your mother sitting in the den was so startling that you felt you had to stop and talk to her rather than to continue run away from your dangerous father. Objection argumentative and it misstates the evidence. Sustained. Are you saying that the mere presence of your mother was so startling that you had to stop and talk to her? I think that would be an extreme mischaracterization of what I've been saying. I ran into the room. My mother was there. I was surprised to see her there. She said, "What's the matter with you?" And I either continued or took some steps and was going and said, "Nothing, you wouldn't understand." And she said, "Oh, I understand. I understand a lot more than you think." And that's what stopped me. I didn't uh, certainly, whether my mother was there or not, I did not want to stop and have a conversation with her. I was not intending to have a conversation with her. And unless she would have said that, I would not have stopped. So because of the words that she said, it stopped him in his tracks. I would have kept going. And you still believe that your father was after you, is that correct? I assumed that. I still believed that. These things happened one after another so quickly that I didn't have time to pause and say, "Why isn't dad here?" I just was startled to see my mom there. She said what she said. I was coming to brush it off and go past her, and she kept talking. My question was, did you still believe your father was after you at that point? I think so. And did you still believe that your father was dangerous? I always believed that my father was dangerous. So you stopped to talk to your mother, is that correct? No, that's not correct. Okay. Tell us what you said while you were in a standing still position to your mother. She said, "What's the matter with you?" I said nothing. You wouldn't understand, intending to brush her off and keep going. And she said, "Oh, I understand, and I understand a lot more than you think." And I stopped. And then at that point, sorry, next question. And then at that point, you stopped and chatted with your mother for a while? No. Did you stop to talk to your mother for a little while? I stopped and said, "What do you mean? What do you know? What do you understand?" And she said, "Oh, I know. I know a lot more than you think. What you think. What do you think? I'm stupid?" Or something along those lines. So, "Oh, I know a lot more than you think. What do you think? I'm stupid?" And I just was taken back by it. Now, when she said, "I understand more than you think," did you believe that your father was still after you in that moment? Probably. But you felt at that point that it was more important to you to clear up your mother's ambiguous comments than it was for you to flee to safety. My brother had said to me 2 days before, this mom knows about the sex. I defended mom to the teeth because I did not believe she knew. I couldn't imagine the betrayal of her knowing. It was on my mind. Remember, she molested Lyle when he was younger. So Lyle definitely knows that mom knows about it, about this stuff. because Jose would be in the bed sometimes as she did that. These people are awful. My brother had said to me 2 days before this, Mom knows about the sex. I defended Mom to the teeth because I did not believe she knew. I couldn't imagine the betrayal of her knowing. It was on my mind. Does she know? Does she not know? When she said this to me, it was the most present thing for me at the moment, and I stopped. I wasn't thinking about Dad's chasing me. I've got to get to the guest house. At that instant, I was just thinking, what is she saying? And you were more concerned about clearing up that ambiguity. I can talk. You were more concerned about clearing up that ambiguity than you were about getting away from your father. Is that true? If that's the way you want to characterize it, that's essentially what I'm saying. No, I am asking you how you want to characterize it, Mr. Menendez. Were you more concerned with getting away, with clearing up your any ambiguity than getting away from your father? Objection, argumentative, overruled. It wasn't a matter of clearing up the ambiguity as though there was a misunderstanding. She said what she said. It stunned me. It made me pause, and I asked her another question. And we are talking about 10 seconds here. We are talking maybe 6. It happened so quickly. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I understand. I understand a lot more than you think. It happened so quickly, and then I ran off." And do you believe that the 6 or 10 seconds might be enough time for your father to catch up to you and kill you? If he was chasing me down the stairs, you're right, he would have. But what she said, it just I can't tell you why, it just did. My question was, were you concerned that the 6 or 10 seconds might be enough for your father to catch up to you and kill you? At that exact moment, it wasn't on my mind. So tell us the conversation you stopped to have with your mother at that time. I went in the door. She said, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "Nothing. You don't understand." She said, "Oh, I understand. I understand a lot more than you think." I paused. I said, what do you understand? What do you know?" She says, "Oh, I know. Do you think I'm stupid? I've always known," something along those lines. And I said, I didn't say anything at first. I just absorbed what she said. And I said, I hate you. And I ran out the door. And with the knowledge that your parents were both against you at this point, you then proceeded on your journey to the guest house. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so now you get to the guest house, and what did you do in the guest house? First thing I said to Lyle was, "Mom knows, Mom knows." And Mom was coming up the stairs at that point and was in the room, ran behind my brother. And and then what happened? So you ran behind your brother? Why? Just something I did from the time when I was a little kid, usually for safety. I knew Lyle would protect me, so I just did. And once again, are you trying to portray yourself as a little child hiding behind your brother? I am not trying to portray myself in any way. Mr. Levin says, "Objection, Your Honor. It's argumentative. The prosecutor asked a question." Court says, "Objection sustained. The answer is stricken." Mr. Khan says, "You hid behind your brother because you were fearful of your mother." I hid behind my brother because it was just the natural thing for me to do. When you say hid behind, tell us exactly what you mean by that. So my brother was standing in the room and I went in the area behind him. You get away from your mother? To get away from my mother, the situation, everything. I just went behind my brother. How tall was your mother? 5'5", 5'6". How tall were you? 5'11". You were about 5 or 6 inches taller than your mother, right? Or he says right. And how much did you weigh? 160. 155, 160. And did you feel that you were stronger than your mother? Physically stronger? Yes. I hadn't thought about it. This was a middle-aged, depressed, alcoholic housewife, and is that what you're telling us? My mother was my mother. I didn't think of her as a middle-aged, depressed, alcoholic housewife. I thought of her as my mother. I thought of her as someone I loved, yet someone that was dangerous. Her her height had nothing to do with it. Yeah, what does her height have to do with anything? I'm asking you if you were aware, according to your testimony here, that she was a middle-aged, depressed, alcoholic woman or housewife. Yes. And you're telling us that you stood behind Lyle Menendez because you were so fearful of this woman. Is that correct? Yes. And that's what I'm telling you. Mr. Levin says objection, argumentative, and misstates his testimony. Court says overruled. Mr. Khan says, so what happened after you were hiding behind your older brother? My mom was still yelling at, get back here. My brother said, how could you know? I thought you knew. How could you know? How could you let it go on with Erik? I am not sure of the exact wounds, and my mother said no one ever helped me. Why should I help you? You're just the cause of all my problems. And she was still yelling at that point. She continued to yell, and my brother and something. She yelled, and she went on. She went out of the guest house. And then you sat down and spoke to Lyle. I wanted to know what more had just happened, what had happened with my brothers and my dad's conversation. And you began to have a conversation with your brother. Essentially a conversation, yes. And what happened to your father, Mr. Menendez? I didn't know what happened to my father. Did you think that at the time he was still running around in circles in your room looking for you? No. This was the man who you felt could chase you to the ends of the earth and follow you. Is that correct? He would. And at the time, your father couldn't find his way to the guest house? I cannot explain why he didn't chase me down the stairs. I don't know the answer to that. He abandoned this chase of you. Is that what you're telling us? Objection calls for speculation. I don't know what was in his mind, says the witness. Overruled, the answer will stand. Mr. Khan says, you never saw your father that evening? No, I didn't. Did the court wish to break now or continue? The court says, all right, we will be recessing. Our schedule is as previously discussed with counsel and the jury that one of the jurors has a medical appointment this afternoon, which means that we won't be in session this afternoon and we will be resuming tomorrow at 8:30. Don't discuss this matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about the matter. We will resume tomorrow at 8:30. See you back here then. The jury exits and leaves. The court says you may step down. All right. As far as this afternoon is concerned, are there any matters that we can discuss this afternoon? Ms. Abramson says, we have scheduling problems for being here this afternoon. Mr. Levin has an appearance. I have an appointment. Mr. Gessler has an appointment. Mr. Gessler says, I might be. I have to call the office. I am on call to the federal court in the matter that the court was contacted by, I believe the court says I was never contacted. Mr. Gessler says, well, my understanding was the federal judge had not contacted or had contacted you and asked you to scrub a whole day of this trial. No, you brought that up once before, and I said I never received any communication, and I still haven't. Mr. Gessler says, okay, well, at any rate, the bailiff says the jury is walking, sir. Okay, let them go. The court says, okay. Mr. Gessler says, I seem to be getting things through intermediaries, and I don't know if she contacted the clerk or not. But at any rate, if it was left that the court says, well, there was some law clerk or somebody that called the clerk, but I never spoke to anybody, and there was never anything approved. Anyway, go ahead. Mr. Gessler says, at any rate, either through intermediaries or whatever, the federal court apparently was under the impression that you wanted me to appear there at some time when we were in when we were dark in this courtroom, and that is what they arranged. And apparently, I am on call for this afternoon. The court says, okay, if they need you this afternoon, that's fine. Mr. Gessler says, I'm not sure. I'm just on call. The court says, I just don't want to lose you for tomorrow. I don't want that situation to arise where they think once they got you, they got you. Mr. Gessler says, no, my impression was I was to testify if it was this afternoon from 1:30 until 7:30 tonight, and they would then again resume Friday, which is a dark day. The court says, okay, all right. Well, because of the conflicts then of scheduling, there doesn't seem to be anything we can do this afternoon, so we will be in recess until tomorrow at 8:30. Mr. Gessler says, thank you, Your Honor. And that is the end of the day. So that is where we end for now. We will continue on going into December 20th for next week. So thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. That's all for now of the Corruption Files. Thanks for digging deep with me. Like, subscribe, and comment your theories below. See you next time.